How did you catch your spouse cheating without even suspecting anything? Dating this girl a few years back, and I became really good friends with her brother just because he appreciated my help during a difficult time for their family. Their father had abruptly passed away. 2 years into the relationship, the brother contacts me and asks to meet up for coffee and a serious conversation. Apparently, he caught his own sister with another guy, a mutual friend of ours, and this crap had been going on for like a year. As soon as he found out, I was told. I broke up with her. I'm still friends with the brother. Go figure. I came back from a trip 4 hours early. My wife was supposed to be at work still. I opened the front door to see her sitting completely undressed from the waist up on the couch making out with a coworker. He ran out the door and she ran into the bathroom and locked the door. I sat on that couch for about an hour because I couldn't think what else to do. Finally, I just stood up and left so she could come out of the bathroom and put a shirt on. I'd been on the road for work. It was supposed to be 10 days. I got home a day early. I had a friend pick me up at the airport to surprise my wife and 2 kids, 2 years and 8 months old respectively. Walked into my ex and her coffee friend snuggling on the couch with my kids in the same room. I was livid, and of course she denied everything. We split up weeks later. 2 weeks ago, I sent a message to a mutual friend asking to borrow a router. He didn't answer, but no worries, he lives nearby. I'll just stop by and grab it. I pull up to his house and start heading down the driveway. He has a long country driveway, so it's a few seconds before I see my car already there. I was in my company vehicle, by the way. My heart began to sink, but they're friends and business partners, so maybe it's nothing. I got out of my van and looked up to see the other guy shirtless in his bedroom. At this point, my heart is down on my stomach and I'm visibly shaking. I go in and immediately head upstairs. He's alone and now fully clothed. I say, I came to borrow the router. Also, have you seen my wife? The car is here. He then proceeds to give the worst improv I've ever heard. No, she was, here at some point though. Whatever, I knew she was there, I just wanted to hear him admit it. I went down, took the router, and headed back to the van where I finally encountered my wife, undressed from the waist up, trying to sneak around the side of his house. And now, here I am, on the internet, submitting the story of my heartbreak. Oh goddamn, I don't know what's worse, the heartbreak or complete fail at concealing what was going on. I don't know what level of improv you were expecting from the guy though. Shirt-eating lizards invaded and your wife took shelter here. Thank God you're unharmed. I think we just fought them off. I hope you didn't give that router back. Her phone got a text from her friend who was in the kitchen with her. So, I assumed one of them sent it to me, opened her phone to see a man's anatomy. I didn't think her female friend had one of those. Now I'm divorced and just don't trust texts from friends. A wild eggplant has appeared. It was super effective. It destroyed the relationship. I caught my ex thanks to frickin' Pokemon Go of all things. She mentioned Pokemon Go was using lots of her data. I explained that in her settings she could see how much data an app was using. I proceeded to show her and proved to her it wasn't by pointing out Tinder was using much more data. It was sad but also funny the way that it went down. I found my wife's notebook. Written on the first page was a 10-step plan detailing how she was going to leave me for another guy. I turned it into 1 step. I got a new job with a cell phone company. Free phone for me, $15 a month for her. First bill comes in with call detail. She was on the phone an hour a day with this number while supposedly at work. I call, a guy answers. I hang up, I ask her, she lies and said it was a girlfriend of hers. I told her I know she's lying and I call it again. A guy answers. F you, Brooke. One night she told me not to come over because she wasn't feeling well. But then my sister wanted this hoodie back that she had borrowed, so I thought I'd stop over with chocolate and a Slurpee. I knocked on her door. She came to the upstairs window with only a blanket wrapped around her. I thought I told you not to come over. My sister needs her hoodie. Who's that? Says some male voice from her bedroom. I see how it is. I'll, talk to you tomorrow, she says. Probably not. Have a good one. After a week visiting friends in London, England, I flew back to Canada. I was supposed to do something with another group of friends when I got back, but plans fell through, so I drove the 4 hours home to the apartment we shared. She expected me home at 6 p.m. I'd been up for 30 straight hours and I got home at 6 a.m. wanting nothing more than to fall into bed. There was an extra set of feet attached to some jerk when I walked in. Girlfriend ran over her phone by accident and destroyed the screen. She asked me to back up all of her stuff and transfer it to her new Pixel. I used that backup tool that captures all sorts of dirty messages and undressed photos with another guy. We had a linked Apple account, we both had the Find My iPhone app, figured out what all the late nights at work really were. One of my former co-workers loaded in an SD card with a scanned project file on it. He put it into the conference room PC, and we were treated to very compromising pictures of his wife with another man. We were just stunned. This was in a senior budgetary meeting with the outside accountants and auditors, and he was sitting right there, and we were looking at his wife and another guy going at it. I reached over and shut the projector off. Nobody said anything. He got up and walked out and drove off in his car, left his phone and laptop sitting on the table. He wound up driving to his parents' house 3 states away and was gone for a week. A friend of mine literally walked in on his wife and another guy doing it on their sofa. I guess he yelled, "What the F?" and ran out. Facebook was a real crap show for a few days, and she even had the gall to blame him back. The old, "It's your fault I cheated." Luckily, there were no children in that marriage and not much money to fight over. My dad told me the story a few years back. So, some of my mum's family were visiting from out of town and they'd planned a night at the bingo, which my dad couldn't attend because he was working 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. He finished work early and on his way home, he saw my babysitter on the street. Aren't you meant to be with my kid?" "No, your wife called me at around 8 p.m. saying she wasn't feeling well and that she'd stay at home." My dad drove home, tried the front door, locked, no lights. He entered the house by the basement door, went up the stairs, and heard them a few feet away. My mum and my mum's cousin. 2 years later, he almost left her with me in tow, but stayed so that I could have a normal life. Most of the time, I wish he'd left because he wouldn't have had to work 90 to 100 a week to avoid being home, and I would have been happier. For those who were wondering, my mum had a long-time affair with her cousin, starting before she met my dad. She wasn't happy in the marriage, I think, but my dad was a good catch. Yes, I'm sure he is my dad, because we look so much the same, and yes, they are still together, and after a year of being angry, I decided to let go, because their relationship has nothing to do with me. I'm just sad for both of them. I returned from work on Christmas Eve. We had tickets to a festival which started the day before New Year's Eve, and I couldn't find the tickets anywhere after seeing them the month before. I decided to double-check the trash before we put it out for collection. I found a used Johnny. We lived on our own. I did the math. Walked in on my girlfriend while she was doing it with another guy. "What are you doing here?" she says. "You gave me a key, remember? I ended up not working today and wanted to surprise you." 15 years later, she reaches out and leaves me a message that she'd like to talk. I figure she's doing some 12-step thing or something and wants to make amends. Nope, she wants to try and sell me on Amway. I woke up in the night with a bad feeling, got out of bed and found my brother railing my wife. So, did the bad feeling go away after that? Or was it still there? You can't just leave out the conclusions like this. I'm kidding, of course. I'm sure there were a great number of very distinct feelings in the minutes, hours, and months that followed. Long story short, I suspected something for a few months. Like an idiot, I opened her phone while she was asleep and I found exactly what I was looking for, like you always do when searching through someone else's phone. Even though I had all the evidence and texts right there to see, she still lied about it multiple times to my face. She eventually admitted to it, but downplayed it heavily. She then tells me that about 2 nights ago he asked her out on a date, and she said, "I had to say no," and was visibly sad about it. In the process of getting a divorce now. Hurts like hell. I went home and my husband wasn't there, which was weird for him at 8 p.m. when an hour earlier he had told me he was going home. I had a gut feeling, went to one of our female friends, who he claimed was like a sister to him's, apartment, and his truck was there. I knock. No answer. Tried the door, and it's unlocked. Walked into the living room and nobody was there. I hear noises in the bedroom. I walk in, and lo and behold, there they are. Tried to make it work over the next couple of months, but I just can't get past it. I didn't even want him to touch me. We divorced 4 years ago. After a night of trying to keep up with my ex and her co-workers drinking, I called it a night. They stopped talking a few minutes later, and the dog scratched at the door. I let the dog in, and I saw them just making out on the couch. I watched for 10 minutes before they noticed me. They were taking their clothes off by then, and he was touching her favorite spots like he knew them well. There was no denying it by then. I'm glad I knew. A tense conversation followed with the two of them. He left, very drunk, on a very cold night. She got a ride to her aunt's place and begged me to go look for him in the cold. A close friend had an affair with another close friend and got caught because she lost an earring in the bed. After the entire blowout of a friend group and lots of shaming on both of them, she says he committed the unspeakable act on her and everyone was stunned and didn't know what to do. So, to prove that he didn't do that to her, he had to show his wife and the police home security footage of the woman astride him like a horse while he was handcuffed. So, he cheated and was accused of an awful crime and then got to top it off by showing his wife a video of him with another woman. There was a lot of hesitation after her first accusation. We didn't really have the time to process that this lifelong friend of ours was the worst kind of person before it was all thankfully set straight and she started backpedaling. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Me and my girlfriend were long distance and she had a habit of going quiet sometimes. She had been texting me for the last few weeks but had made excuses not to come visit. I went to a party that my friend had organized. I met a friend of his who told me he had a new girlfriend. I was surprised he hadn't mentioned her, so I asked who she was. This lady introduced me to my girlfriend. She told everyone that we'd broken up and had been dating my friend for about a month. She didn't bother to tell me. Her phone went off and she asked me what it said. I looked at it and it said, "I want to bend you over and spank you." We were engaged and he had a drinking problem. He was blacked out drunk, accidentally butt-dialed me, and I listened to the whole thing. Only to find out after that it was with a working girl. Not me, but one of my best friends. His girlfriend snuck a guy into their bedroom apartment whilst he was playing Xbox in the living room. I heard the argument through the mic after he heard a noise coming from the bedroom. He kicked her out and continued playing with us. To the people saying my buddy deserved it because he was addicted to video games, I don't know where you got that from. He only plays when there's a bit of spare time. She's just a crap person. After he caught them in the act and kicked her out, he came back onto the mic to tell us what had happened and to get off the game. We encouraged him to stay on and talk everything through with us. We were in different countries at the time and couldn't see him in person because we were worried about him. Their relationship had been a little rocky, but who'd guessed that someone would cheat, especially in the next room? He's a great guy who didn't deserve to have that happen to him. He's now in a healthy relationship with a wonderful lady. Didn't happen to me, but my closest friend growing up. He was making out with his girlfriend in the back of her car, which at the time she only had for a week, and he put his hand on the back of the car somewhere between the back of the headrest and the rear windshield. I guess the opposite of a dashboard? Anyway, he put his hand in a semi-fresh load of someone else's splooge. And her answer was that her gum must have flown out of her mouth and landed back there and then the sun melted it into a splooge-like substance. My first long-term girlfriend and I were going to the same college. I got accepted but had to start the semester after she did, meaning we'd be slightly long distance for a few months. It wasn't too bad because we were only about 2 hours apart, so it was pretty easy for me to visit, but our relationship did struggle a bit. I remember one night I got a phone call from her, and when I picked up it was obvious it was a butt dial. I could hear her talking to some guy, but I couldn't quite make out what they were saying. I called her and she picked up and I asked what was up. She said she was in bed and about to go to sleep. I told her about the butt dial and she said it was her friend Jack, who I met asking to borrow something. I thought that was odd, but I brushed it off. A couple of weeks later, I was up there visiting her and I met a bunch of really cool people, including this guy, Luke. After I got back from visiting, I got a Facebook message from him saying, "Look man, I hate to be the one to say this, but I think you're an awesome guy and you don't deserve to have this happen to you. She's been cheating on you with this guy pretty soon after she started here." I was devastated, but I had to hear it from her, so I called her and asked, "Are you cheating on me?" She gave a heavy sigh and said, "Well, at least I don't have to lie anymore." That guy's voice I'd heard wasn't Jack, it was the guy she was cheating on me with. I just trusted her so much that I took her word for it. Even though it was painful, I was grateful to Luke for sending me that message. What's funny is that most of the people I met up there that were her friends sided with me after the breakup, so when I started going there next semester, I had a group of friends to support me, and most of them are still very close friends of mine to this day. I went to the bathroom while we were playing board games. When I came back, everyone laughed at all of my moves. She had looked at my hand of clue cards. It made it really hard to trust her during the group whoopee that followed. You know what? I think you might have slightly misunderstood the intention of this question, but your story did technically answer one of the possible meanings, so we'll take it. Hope that it didn't make the sweaty 8-hour after-party gyrations too awkward for everyone else. My boyfriend finally convinces me to get another girl involved in our bedroom activities after months of begging. I finally agree and our mutual friend comes over. Things get hot and heavy, and when he starts doing the deed with her, he moans, "Damn, you feel even better than usual." And everyone freezes. He tries to tell me that he was thinking about my hoo-ha while using hers and that it just felt different, but she felt so guilty that she confessed on the spot and begged me to forgive her. We don't really talk anymore, but last I heard she had been dating my ex for over a year. My wife had been texting a lot and was very evasive when I inquired about it, though she smirked when she thought it was making me jealous. Yeah, she's that kind of person. Turns out she had left her email logged into my cell phone, so I noticed she had a weekend Airbnb trip to a place that was one state away. We were living in different states at the time, and the Airbnb really seemed to be of the quiet romantic getaway type. Total occupancy 2. Well, I thought, that was fairly suspicious. So I monitored her Airbnb page, which was easy since we were friends on Airbnb, figuring that the owner might leave a comment about how great she was as a guest, which it turned out she did. Except the review went something like, "Wife's name and guy not named me were wonderful guests," and so on. Yeah, so anyone want to guess what the conditional probability is of a weekend trip involving infidelity? I'm pretty sure it's rather high. My wife apparently panicked and asked Airbnb to remove the review and altered her name on the site, and then finally, having failed to get the review taken down, deleted her account. I eventually asked her about it during a counseling session, and she had a ready-made defense about how she had meant to take the trip with another coworker, but that person's car broke down. So, the guy's name ended up tagging along since he was that coworker's boyfriend, and they all stayed there together. But he signed the guest book, hence a totally honest mistake. You know what? In hindsight, I'm pretty sure she wasn't telling the full truth. We are not still married. My ex-wife was an alcoholic. Like, she had it real bad. One time I got home from my night shift a little early and, you guessed it, she was drunk. Well, I was in the mood and she's usually drunk when we do it anyway, so what the hell, I came on to her. So, we were doing it and it's dark and she says, "You need to hurry up." So I ask, why? "He's gonna be home soon." Who? "My husband, you freaking idiot." Yeah. So anyway, I get off her and hop out the bed and flip on the light, and this witch looks absolutely baffled. She's really drunk and totally dumbfounded. I ask her, "Who did you think was doing the deed with you?" "What? Who did you think was doing the deed with you?" "What are you talking about?" "Never mind, I'll talk to you about it in the morning." "I'm not drunk." Yeah. She didn't even know what the frick I was on about. So I went to bed on the couch and I was sitting there going over stuff in my head and I hear her come down the stairs. She goes into the kitchen and I hear a drawer shut. A few seconds later, she's standing over me with a fricking knife. I promptly take the knife from her and tell her to go to bed, which she obliges without saying a single word. I grab the kids, put them in the car and drive to my mum's house where we spend the night. She starts blowing up my phone at 10 a.m., frantic that she doesn't know where the kids are. We have a mini-intervention, she promises to go to AA, I attempt to erase the entire night from my memory, which didn't work obviously, and about a month later she hasn't held up her AA agreement, which has pretty much gone back to her old ways. I come home from work and I see a freaking LA Dodgers hat on my couch. So who was over?" I ask. "Nobody." "Are you sure?" "Yeah." "Don't frickin' bullcrap me. Who was over here?" "Are you calling me a fricking liar?" "Yeah. I am, because someone left their fricking hat on my fricking couch." At this point, she concocts some stupid story about a neighbor coming over to borrow something. I knew she was lying. At this point, I'd pretty much given up on the marriage, but I didn't know what to do. I was afraid that if I divorced her, she'd somehow get the kids. There was a lot more effed up stuff happening over the next month or so, including her making up a story about Mexicans jumping her, my neighbor calling child protection services, me catching her actually kiss a guy, and 2 junkies admitting to doing the deed with her at the same time. Then one day in July of 2008, I asked her to have a seat. I told her I was filing for divorce. She put up a fight, but I won full custody. I started dating other people, and I've been with my new wife for 9 years now. The end. I found out that my boyfriend who I dated from ages 15 through 18 had been cheating on me when, upon walking into the apartment he shared with his mother and 2 elementary-aged sisters, the younger sister asked me, "When did you leave?" I asked her, "When was I here?" She responded, "You were here all night. I could hear you talking to him." I'd not been there for 2 days at that point. I asked him what she was talking about and he blew bubbles for a few minutes before confessing. Good riddance. He changed his phone password. I left it for a few months until something just wasn't sitting right in my gut. I unlocked his phone with my thumb and I didn't even have to look. There was a messaging app open with a girl he was meeting the next day. I sent him to work without confronting him. I reset passwords through a long chain of emails to finally access the one associated with the messaging app. Lo and behold, he was sending approximately 10,000 emails per year for the last 4 years of our relationship. He was living a whole second life and hiding it from everyone. Our relationship had never appeared stronger, and we'd been seeing a therapist to work on strengthening our communication for 8 months, once a week. Clearly, he was hiding his issues from the therapist as well. At the time, I felt like it ruined my life. I remember thinking very clearly, what did I do to deserve this? And when I thought that, something inside of me just snapped. I calmly went and brought a giant coffee and cardboard boxes. I packed up all of his things before he was home from work and changed the locks. The end.
What's the weirdest thing that you've seen at someone's house that they thought was completely normal? Their mother cooked 5 different dinners from scratch every day. They each decided what they wanted, and she just cooked it for them, all 3 children, husband, and herself. When I went round the first time, she seemed insulted that I didn't want anything special and just had what my friend was having. It must have taken her hours, as they all chose to eat at different times as well. Not the weirdest, but I always ate one meal with my whole family. 12-year-old me was out of his comfort zone. I mean, I don't blame you, but you know what? 30-year-old me is going to just go right on in and order. Oh, shucks. Order me up a side of ravioli and flapjacks. Oh, yuck. Rather than a garbage can, my friend's family had a room to throw away their garbage. A room that served no other purpose than a garbage can. I asked him what they were going to do when it was full, and he just said it wasn't their problem because they were moving in a few months. Even if you're moving, wouldn't you rather not have rotting piles of garbage in your house? Response: worked demolition on a house that was used in the same manner, required jumpsuits and masks for the biohazard that was once a sunroom. Well, I guess you can say that that is a place that the sun no longer shines, and it probably smells like one. Yep. I went to someone's house where, no joke, they wouldn't flush the toilets until they were at full capacity. The entire top floor just reeked of waste. It was disgusting. Edit, follow-up. One time, I saw them scooping the waste into a bucket and throwing it in the backyard. I wish I was joking. When playing on a console in the lounge, when there was a scream, and his little brother ran past, 12-ish, followed by his birthday suit little sister, 14-ish, screaming at him. Apparently he keeps creeping into the bathroom to watch her shower. My friend and his parents thought it was hilarious. None of them seemed to find it weird. And no, there was no lock on the bathroom door. Not sure why. I had a best friend all through elementary and middle school. I was over his house practically every day. One day, his mom gave him a meal of cooked spaghetti noodles in a bowl of milk and gave me one as well. It was the strangest meal I've ever seen. He loved it. I did not. Hung out many times after that and never once saw him eat a bowl of milk spaghetti. Messed up. Response: macaroni, milk, salt, and butter. It was an ordinary dish in my area in Finland at the war times. When proper ingredients were rare, my grandma made it for my mother and my mother made it for me, and I still love it. My friends think it's weird. It's so easy and fast to make. I always make it when I want something warm, fast. It's called macaroni, macaroni soup. My childhood friend invited me over after not hanging out for a few years. We were both teenagers. We got on the subject of sealing the deal, and she pulled out a little shoebox from under her bed. She had saved every spunk-filled naughty balloon from her and her boyfriend, tied in a knot and in a pile of about 50. I didn't know what else to say, so I was like, cool. Went home shortly thereafter and didn't speak to her again. Maybe I was too harsh? Maybe not. I have to admit, with all the comments following this story in particular, for some reason, everyone jumped on the idea of pirates, as if the shoebox was a treasure trove, like if they were looking for this. Yarg, we be pirates of the vast seas to find all the treasure we could know. Oh, no. "Me hearties, turn around. These be cursed waters within this bedroom. Run! Run, boys! Ha 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 ha!" I stay at my best friend's house a lot because she still lives with her family, and it's kind of nice being around them. One time her dad left the door open while he was taking a dookie, and as I walked past, he just nodded hello at me and continued reading his newspaper. When I told her about it, she just shrugged and was like, "So?" Edit. I am a dude, so maybe he was just showing me who's boss. You know, I did actually have a certain comment for this, but I think this response from Cheeseburger Waffles is exactly what I could imagine. "My dad did this once while he had horrible diarrhea. I was like 6 or 7. I just saw it out of the corner of my eye while walking past. Heard some blasts. Kept walking. I just kept walking." My dog died a few years ago. He was a beloved member of the family, and we were all pretty torn up about it. My mom and dad decided to have him cremated. A few weeks later, I came home from college and saw the urn. Right in the middle of the coffee table, I said, "Mom, is that the dog?" And she said, "Yes, dear." And then my dad shouted angrily, "He liked to watch TV!" Bugs. I was at this girl's house once for a sleepover party when I was a teenager, and there were bugs, and she thought it was totally normal. It started off with ants in the living room. Everyone was grossed out. Then, when we were all going to bed, one of the girls found a tick on her pillow, and the girl whose house it was said, "Oh yeah, they come off my dog all the time." Last time I went over to her house. The house was mine, and I thought this was completely normal until later on in life. A little backstory. My family went to Catholic church every Sunday. Other than just going to church, our family wasn't really that religious. Every Friday evening, we would go grocery shopping, the whole family. One Friday night, we were in traffic, and a motorcycle flies by and clips the side of a vehicle. The girl flies off the back, and the guy's leg ends up being caught in something and twists like 8 times. I was 8 years old when this happened, and remember it like it was yesterday. Well, my mom runs into a nearby business to call 911. This was way before cell phones, and they clear the accident. On our way home, my dad says that we were going to say the rosary. If you're Catholic or religious at all, you know about the rosary. It's prayers that you repeat over and over and over, etc. Thinking that would be the only night that happened, my dad decides to say the rosary every night. At 6 p.m., we had to be in the living room, on our knees, and it lasted for an hour. Then we'd eat supper and get ready for bed. This went on for a long time. I had a friend over one night. We were playing video games in my room when my dad came to get me for the rosary. I told my friend to continue playing games until I come back. Nope. My dad said he had to participate. My mom told my dad in private that he couldn't make someone else's child participate in the rosary. My dad was dead set on my friend doing the rosary with us. My mom ended up bringing my friend home, and no one from my school wanted to come to my house after that. This is too buried for more than 3 people to see, but I've got to get this off my chest. It's something about my own house, or rather my parents' house. You know how parents will have a shrine of their children's pictures over fireplaces, bookcases, on the refrigerator, usually showcasing their beautiful children throughout various stages of development, school pictures, prom pictures, etc. My parents had a few of those scattered throughout the house. There's 5 of us kids, but only 4 kids are showcased. I'm completely absent. I didn't notice this till my late teens. Girlfriends would ask, "These baby pictures are adorable. Which one is you?" None of them are. When questioned, my parents stated, "We just don't have any pictures of you." Fast forward to current times. I'm in my mid-20s, live on my own, and my parents are divorced, each living in their own respective homes. One shrine is now divided into 2 shrines in 2 houses, still only featuring photographic evidence of 4 out of 5 children. Again, I am left out. Again, when questioned, "I just don't have any pictures of you." Both parents retort, "I'm not adopted. I'm the middle child. I'm the intelligent, clear-headed one. My role in the family was the mediator, the communicator, the problem solver, the teacher. I'm also the only child that did not rebel against his parents' authority. I'm not going to say my parents don't love me, but I can say that they didn't bother keeping any picture of me. Had, keyword had, an overbearing friend who constantly needed attention. Finally go to her house for the first time and find out she lets her ferrets run around their single wide and crap everywhere. There were also dirty clothes piled in every room. Oh, the ferrets like to hide in it. I like animals, and I had never really petted a ferret. So I reached down, and the thing is crawling with fleas. Literally, there was almost no patch of fur that didn't look like it was moving from all the fleas. She noticed me cringe and said, "Oh, don't worry. I think he thinks they are snacks. He's always trying to get them with his mouth." No, B. Your ferret is probably getting bitten left and right and itching like crazy. Little late in the game, but why not? I was about 9, and my family went on a trip with one of my friends from school and his family. They're nice enough people, but had weird mannerisms and were strangely formal. Anyway, the one weird thing I noticed was that every now and then they'd each go out of the room for a moment and come back in. Thought nothing of it after a while and kind of forgot about it. One night, the kids were chilling in the bedroom while the adults were in the lounge. A few cold ones were had, and they got a little merry, and allegedly, by mistake, my dad rips a huge fart. The scream that came from my friend's mom was blood-curdling, and everyone kind of rushed in to see what had happened. She got really embarrassed and explained that they never passed gas in front of each other. It was a little awkward after that, but pretty funny. Well, I mean, yeah, wow. They're just like chilling on the couch. Oh boy, I can't believe it. You, me, and the kids, and we're just having a great. Oh my God! I'm sorry, just can't help it. Just went a little toot toot, and there it is. Boom, there it is. Hey, Peter. My grandma's neighbor had a daughter who was my best friend for a few years growing up. They had a nice house with nice bedrooms, clean, always made beds, because they all slept downstairs in the living room. The dad on the couch, mom on the love seat, and the kids on the floor. All we did was play in her room, but if I spent the night, on the floor I went. What is this, Oliver Twist? Please, sir, may I sleep on the bed just once? No, now dance for me. I went and stayed for dinner at a friend's house during high school one night. Getting ready to eat were friend's dad, friend's mom, friend's older brother, friend, me. Count 'em, 5 people. Friend's mom walks out with dinner. It's like a big bowl of steamed veggies, which looked fine, and a plate with a piece of steak and like 2 pieces of grilled chicken. The plate hit the table, and everyone but me lunged for the meat. It was freaking survival of the fastest. It was like when a pack of dogs get a deer. 5 of us at the table, 3 pieces of meat. At my house, Mom served dinner all portioned up in portions proportionally to how much each of us eat. Which I guess might seem weird to how they ate, but it was the weirdest thing I ever saw at someone's house that they thought was completely normal. My friend told me that when her and her brother would find turtles, her dad would drill holes in their shells. This is painless for them, she said, and tie a string to their shell and the other end of the string to the fence so that the turtles would be their pets until they chewed through the string. This was totally normal for her. Edit, I have done some internet research, and the results as to whether a turtle can feel through its shell are inconclusive. I did read that touching a turtle is like how it feels for us when someone touches our fingernail. However, if I cut my fingernail, I do not feel pain. In my personal opinion, I would say no. The turtle did not feel the crazy man drilling through its shell. So within 2 minutes of Googling that question, yes, tortoises and turtles can very much feel pain through their shell because there are nerves that lead to the back of their nervous system. Please do not go out there and be curious about drilling holes into a bunch of turtle shells. That is entirely too cruel. I'm pretty open-minded, can't answer directly, but man, one time I was minding my own business, eating some peas, and a visitor to our house started cracking up as if eating peas was some foreign concept. Yeah, she was pretty big. Response: Apologies for the long rant here, but oh man, you just brought up an angry memory for me. We have a couple of sheltered friends. Well, acquaintances is more accurate. Anyway, for a season finale of Game of Thrones, I busted my butt making a huge themed feast for all our friends. Roasted a duck, had all kinds of delicious veggies, homemade bread, tarts, and pies. It was bigger than any Thanksgiving dinner I'd ever made. So this couple reluctantly sat down at the table, nervously side-eyeing the food. I started to get worried as they were passing up dishes, thinking maybe I'd forgotten some severe food allergy and hadn't made things they could eat. Finally, the husband put a sliver of duck and some roasted turnips in butter on his plate and poured a glass of honey mead. Every bite or sip he took and offered to his wife was followed by a melodramatic and over-the-top grimacing from both of them. Picture giving a baby a lemon wedge. It was embarrassing. Speaking of babies, they brought theirs. Cute little girl. I had her on my lap and she was reaching for everything on my plate. Gobbled up some duck, blueberries and cream, homemade bread, etc. with absolute delight. The mom kept exclaiming how weird it was because the kid doesn't like anything homemade. She eventually retreated to another room where I found her stuffing candy bars into her mouth and giving her kid cookies. I was so sad. Went on a date with a girl. Things went well, and she invited me to her place for a drink. I didn't think they were going well enough for anything other than a drink to happen, so I accepted and headed over. Got my drink, and she excused herself to grab a quick shower. Well, maybe things were going well enough for more than just a drink. At the time, I was a smoker, so while she showered, I headed out to the deck. She wasn't in the shower yet, and when she heard me pull the curtains back to get to the sliding door, she said, "Don't go out there. The deck's no good. My key's on the table. Go out front for a smoke." I figured the apartment management hadn't kept the deck in good repair, and when I looked out, I could see something on the deck, but couldn't make out what it was. I headed out front for a smoke. When I was done, I let myself back in. The water shut off by the time I made it to the living room, and she said she'd be right out. I decided to look at the deck again. Curiosity and all. I flipped a light on and cupped my hands in the glass to block out the glare. Cat crap. The whole deck was literally covered in cat crap. There was fresh crap piled on old crap, and not a speck of deck to be seen. She came out wearing loose sweats and a little tank top, looking darn good, but I excused myself with some stupid reason or another and noped the heck out. TLDR, was an extra on the new show, Cat Crap Hoarders of Vancouver. A former coworker who invited me to hang out one day. You know the bulk packages of food that you see at Sam's Club and similar stores? Well, the living room kitchen area of this girl's apartment was covered in bulk packs of various foods. Noodles, sauces, taco shells, boxed macaroni, etc. They were stacked up on all the counters, stacked up against walls, stacked up in every corner, stacked up on top of a table and the fridge, all for her and her boyfriend. Enough food to last 2 people at least 6 months. There were also stacks of products in the bathroom. The cat's litter box was in the tub, and there was cat litter all over the bathroom floor. Edit, in case you're thinking, okay, so the girl likes to stock up on food ahead of time, and her bathroom is messy. I want to add that she was crazy. Drives to a particular pizza restaurant for lunch without us having previously discussed where to eat. Insists that we get certain pizza toppings. Tells the server we are splitting the bill. Normally, I wouldn't mind splitting the bill with a friend, but when you basically force someone to go to a certain restaurant and they can't even choose their food? But she did randomly drive us to Target and buy me a pack of Band-Aids without knowing either me or my then boyfriend, well, orders me to date him for 6 more months before we think about getting engaged. 6 months later, we were married, and our 4th anniversary is approaching. Orders me to paint my bathroom a shade of blue. Repeatedly says that her boyfriend is afraid of her going back to her old life and turning to her old ways. She keeps repeating this, so I assume that she is hinting around about wanting to discuss it. Whenever I ask what she means, she refuses to explain but keeps bringing it up. I bolted out of there as fast as I could after we returned to her apartment, and I haven't spoken to her ever again. She did other things that were rude, not just crazy. Not me, but my friend, A, was sleeping at his friend's, B, house. When A and B got into B's house, B's parents were instantly up on their feet to meet them in the hallway. The parents then said, "All right, guys, time to search," and proceeded to check the pockets and bags of B and A in search of anything smoking, tobacco, and herb related. They acted like it was no big deal, but my friend A was really kind of shocked and felt uncomfortable having to let B's parents search all of his belongings. And apparently it was a good 5-minute search, thoroughly making sure nothing was wrapped up in socks or in the hoods of their jackets, etc. Really weird stuff. It was the early 90s in Scotland, at my friend's house, and his mother called us downstairs to eat. Dining table was prepared, and she told us to sit down and went into the kitchen. In there, she called out, "Jim, your dinner is ready." Jim being my friend's father, who was sat in the lounge watching TV. Jim shouted back, "I'll eat my freaking dinner in here like I always do." His mother came in and laid our plates down on the table. It was lasagna. I liked lasagna and got down to eating. She then went into the lounge with another plate. Next thing I heard Jim shouting, "What the freak is that? For freak's sake!" And the plate is smashed off the wall. "I don't freaking eat rabbit food." Jim stormed out of the house and drove off, and Mother retreated to the kitchen. My friend didn't blink and continued eating.
People whose work brings them into other people's homes. What stuff have you seen? I once delivered pizza to a falcon tamer whose falcon was just chilling with him on the porch. That was exciting. As most of these stories will feature tales of hoarding, I'll give you a story with a bit of a twist. I'm a plumber by trade, and although most of my work is with processing plants and factories, occasionally our boss will do a favor for a project manager or other high-level contact. We were asked to go and install a RO system. It's a type of water purification system at someone's country home. Most people have no need for water that pure. A filtration system and UV treatment is way more than enough, but if the client wants to pay for it, then he gets what he wants. So me and my coworker drive to this guy's house in the middle of nowhere. It's a pretty standard-looking house and nothing out of the ordinary. We go inside, and he brings us down to the basement to this big steel door and a set of steps leading further down. This guy had excavated and over the last few years built an underground bunker. Think of the place in 10 Cloverfield Lane, but this was way better built. It was still rather Spartan as there was no furniture yet, but this place was massive, possibly about 5,000 square foot of living space. There was an air filtration system that would bring fresh air in and pump it out to several spots on his property, a series of buried reservoirs to hold fresh water pumped from his well after it went through his newly installed RO. He had power from a mix of the grid and a small solar plant on the roof of his house and another in a field away from the house, as well as a backup generator. There were shelves in the walls with lights installed for growing small crops, even one room that he said will be dedicated to raising a couple of chickens. This man was geared up to survive the end of the world and had spent a ton of money to do so. I've seen a lot of preppers before, but this was a very different level of prep. I work as a technician in a pharmacy, and sometimes I'll offer to do deliveries at the end of the day if they're not too far and they missed our regular delivery guy. This one lady, who was very hard of hearing, was starting on a weekly pill organizer that we'd prepare for her, so she invited me in so I could explain it to her. Immediately, I saw 2 cats, who ran off very quickly and smelled a very strong odor of cat poop. I assumed there was a box in the other room that she wouldn't remember to clean and that she couldn't smell it. And when we sat down, I realized there were large carpenter ants everywhere, on the table, on the walls, on the ceiling, on the carpet, etc. She didn't even seem to notice them. There are worse stories for sure, but I'd been serving this lady for 5 years at the store and would have never suspected such a thing. I was so thankful for the fresh air I was breathing in when I left. As a guy who's personally afraid of bugs, I would have freaked out. I would have booked it out the door as soon as I saw all those ants. I'm in and out of thousands of houses every year, so I've seen a lot. One of the strangest was finding hidden cameras. The people were moving in that day, so not theirs, set up in the attic and pointing into bedrooms and bathrooms. Also in the same attic, it was a big one, was a completely furnished hidden room that was only accessible from the attic. Needless to say, the homeowners were pretty freaked out. I've mentioned these people before. I was building an addition to an existing house. The owners were a weird pair, husband and wife. The husband looked like Gollum and the wife looked like Hagrid. They were both very slow mentally and they smelled terrible, like they bathed in pure ammonia. Even the new addition started to smell. The more we sealed it up, the more it stank, and we hadn't even opened them up to each other yet. At the time, I wasn't anybody important on the crew, so I never had any occasion to enter the house itself, until one fateful morning when I was there early. The power to the exterior outlets had been cut, and the electrician hadn't installed the new ones yet, so I decided to run an extension cord from inside the house. I opened the back door intended to become a hallway entrance, and the smell nearly knocked me over. It was like the ammonia smell that clung to them but ramped to 100 times. Breathing shallowly through my mouth, I ventured into the dimly lit interior. The living room, or at least I think it was a living room, was a literal maze of containers, cages, 18 inches tall and a couple feet square, all stacked one on top of the other. As my eyes adjusted, I thought they were filled with rabbits. The ones by the door were stacked such that I could see over them. Elsewhere and against the walls, they were stacked to the ceiling, each and every one of them with an occupant. I stepped closer. Not rabbits. Cats. Hundreds of cats. Each cage containing at least one, some 2 or 3, each stacked 4 or 5 high, nothing under them, each one urinating and defecating on the cage below. I got the heck out of there. I really hope those cats are okay. Worked as an apprentice to a private contractor for a year before going back to school. The worst was when we were working in a woman's home, getting it ready to be sold. We were painting her son's room, and we had to move the furniture to the middle of the room to cover it up with the tarp to avoid messes. As we moved the bed, we found the kid's heroin stash, complete with dirty needles in an open cardboard box. Kid was about 16. We didn't say anything to anyone, just slid the box under the moved bed and went to work. We were pretty glad to be out of that place ASAP, though. Along with the kid, his single mother definitely seemed to be tweaking at points, and looking back on it, I suspect she was an addict as well. On the other hand, the best job we had was a 6-month job that started as a front entryway reno for a woman who had recently lost her husband. When we started, she kept to herself and spent most of the days in her room. She had some medical issues that prevented her from working, and was clearly very depressed. The entryway renovation became a living room, and then kitchen, and then basement, and eventually a whole home renovation inside and out. The woman kept finding new things she wanted done. In the process of all this, she started to heal, and by the end of the job, she was always out in the living room or kitchen, chatting away with us and feeding us and taking care of us. The last day of work was only a 2-hour cleanup, after which she took us out to lunch to thank us for the renovation and, more importantly, helping her overcome the depression that she was dealing with. I love that lady. And I love her too. I'm so glad that story had a good ending. I used to work on foreclosed homes as an inspector of sorts. I remember we went to one foreclosed house where all the windows were painted black. Inside were these massive wooden stands with the fluorescent lights and nothing else. I don't even think any of the appliances were left. The thing that gets me to this day, though, about this house was that the people growing weed there thought painting the windows black would be a good idea, because that's not suspicious at all. I'm in nursing/mental health. Some of the more memorable things I saw were during my student placements many years ago. For instance, one older guy I visited was a bit odd. As he was talking, I was scanning the room and see these framed photos of him from decades ago. He was in full blackface in them. Why he proudly displayed these photos, I don't know. Also, as a student, I encountered what I believe was a case of spousal Munchausen by proxy. The client was bedbound and had been for decades following a vehicle accident. She was skin and bones, couldn't communicate, and had some type of fungal infection covering her skin. The husband watched her like a hawk and didn't leave the nurse and I alone for a moment. Very controlling, yet played up the carer role. It just didn't seem genuine, and I suspect he was getting secondary gains from the years of sympathy in his role, hence my belief it was a case of MBP. There was also some other guy living in the house who just stood around and watched us like a creep. When we got in the car after the visit, both the nurse and I agreed it was extremely disturbing. Nowadays I'm in psych, and the things I see don't faze me. Carpet installer for 30 years. The list is endless. Some highlights. Full-on woohoo dungeon in the basement. NYC male prostitute with custom wallpaper. Silver drawings of gay woohoo on black background. Did several buildings for a developer. Later saw him on the front page of the paper getting arrested for kidnapping/extortion. He was Russian mafia. Have showed up to find piles, not one pile, piles of dog crap all over the house. A secret computer lab in a bazillion-dollar home behind a bookcase, down a long concrete hallway, and a giant steel door. Sounds like he's Batman. Had the power company running an underground line outside the home I was working in. They hit the water main for the entire area. Guy had a water spout in his front yard like Old Faithful, only it didn't stop until they dug up his entire yard and the water had destroyed the entire bottom of his house. He was at work, had no idea it was happening. I could go on. You don't have to go on. That's enough. That's plenty. I don't typically go into other people's houses. I'm a mechanic who does house calls, which occasionally brings me inside to wash my hands or use the bathroom. The best one was when I was doing a job for a man who broke down at his girlfriend's house. After the job was done, I asked to go inside to wash my hands and he says it's fine. I'm washing my hands at the sink and suddenly this naked black woman comes out of a room and gives me a confused look. Who are you? What are you doing in my house? I'm the mechanic. You can't be the mechanic. You're a woman. Person I worked on the vehicle for. Must be cheating with me. With a white girl at that. What has this world come to? Well, to be fair, I'm not white, I'm mixed, and I assure you, I am indeed the mechanic. No, women cannot be mechanics, and I don't care what you are. So the strangest thing I've ever seen on a house call was an overly paranoid, mildly sexist, naked black woman. I tried to calm her down, but it didn't work. Apparently the guy got dumped that night and it was all my fault. I now ask for a hose to wash my hands. Geesh, I really hope that guy finds a better girlfriend. I clean houses. One client has us clean once a week. If it lands on the floor, it stays there until we clean it up. Her youngest child is still in diapers. There are usually dirty diapers around the house completely filled with pee. Her bed sheets always have crumbs from her kids eating in her bed. There have been skid marks on her sheets and duvet cover. They have 5 trash cans in the kitchen so they don't have to worry about taking the trash out. Her kids play with toothpaste and toothbrushes, so we find globs of toothpaste all over the house. My boss has once gone to make the bed, pulled the sheets back, and found a huge pink adult toy, and the mirror-sided nightstand was covered in lube. I think the wrong thing was lubed up there. Working in financial services here with insurance and investments. While I've seen a whole slew of different stuff between new and old clients, probably the most interesting aspect of the job is seeing people who make really good money for themselves but live well within, and sometimes below, their means. One particular case was a young guy in his early 30s who had accumulated quite a bit of wealth, was making upwards of $85,000 a year plus bonuses, and was living in a rather run-down apartment in a bad side of town. Roaches, leaky ceiling, the works. And he wasn't looking to upgrade his living situation. Ended up being one of my favorite clients. Super nice guy, level head. We play golf on the weekends sometimes still. 4! Used to deliver furniture, so boy do I have some good stories. Number 1. A lady had mannequins everywhere in her house, all of them dressed up in fancy clothes and in various positions. Some sitting in the living room watching TV, one in the kitchen with an apron cooking, 2 at the dinner table, 1 sitting on the edge of her bed, and best of all, 1 on the toilet downstairs. It was very strange. The lady dressed in very bright clothes with very red lipstick, and her eyebrows always made her look very surprised. Number 2. This delivery was in a run-down old neighborhood that was in a very wooded area. Being there just gave me the creeps. I was putting together a bed frame upstairs and looked downstairs through an open air vent and saw that the garage area had freezers lining the walls and a little workshop with a meat grinder and a bunch of tools in the middle. I think it was the fastest I ever assembled that particular bed frame. Noped right out of there, but I did get a $20 tip, so I never mentioned it to anyone until now. Number 3. This time, I was delivering a bedroom set to a nice lady in an apartment complex. Walked into her apartment, and there was no furniture anywhere except a mattress on a simple bed frame in her bedroom with a TV in front of it, and a mirror on the ground in her living room with a laptop and webcam on a chair. When taking her old mattress out, she had several adult toys under her bed, all of them over 10 inches long and girthy. I think you can guess what her job was. Number 4. There was a lady who ordered furniture online, which was unusual because it was such a small business. We arrived with the Cali king-sized bed, and the woman was bedridden and well over 500 pounds. Who answered the door, you might ask? Her husband, who must have weighed 150 pounds soaking wet. They used some pulley system they had installed to pick her up off the bed a few inches, and we swapped beds with her looming over us watching TV. Her husband was cool though. In the office downstairs next to the door, he had a sweet battle station. 4 monitors, a beast of a computer, TV, sweet chair, mini fridge. Apparently she was a trust fund baby, and he was riding the gravy train all the way to Steam HQ. Number 5. Delivered furniture to a nice gentleman one week, and he had pictures of him and his family everywhere. 3 weeks later, we deliver again, and I noticed in all of the pictures, the wife's face was cut out, but the pictures were put back on the walls. Guess that explains the lazy boy. Number 6. Last one. We were given keys to a family's house and asked to deliver and assemble while they weren't home. Not unusual, surprisingly. We get there and start putting their 2 twin-sized bed frames together, and next thing we know, we hear 2 people going at it hard in the next room. Seriously, they were getting it, shaking stuff on the walls and everything. They finished before we were done, and 2 15-ish-year-old kids walk out. Turns out he decided to skip school with his girlfriend. Go Timmy! He tipped us $10 to not say anything to his parents or our manager. Former door-to-door salesman checking in. Sold subscriptions for TV and internet. Once tried to sell a lady, read, probably serial killer, whose house was filled with literally thousands of porcelain dolls of all shapes, sizes, styles, and degrees of scariness. Gotta have some variety. She had everything from pristine dolls that looked like they'd never been touched to Annabelle-tier filthy monstrosities that honest to God looked straight out of a horror movie, and these dolls were everywhere. Also, her floors and what I could see of the walls were painted red. Super creepy. 10 out of 10 would almost get murder again. I think the only thing missing from that was a spectacular la 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 in the background. I used to work in door-to-door sales, so I saw quite a lot of stuff. One time I knocked on a door and the screen door was shut, but the door behind was wide open and I could see right down the hallway into the house. This guy, who I can only assume was waiting for someone else, literally jumped around the corner at the end of the hallway, bollock naked, locked eyes with me and screamed and hid around the corner again. He very awkwardly asked why I was there and I explained, in between fits of laughter, and said I'd leave him to it and hope he had a great day. Another time, a guy opened the door at 11:30 a.m. holding a bottle of Jack Daniels that he was drinking from and invited me in. He had 3 teeth and no shirt on. I politely declined. Back in the early 90s, I spent 2 summers from college working at a little mom-and-pop appliance and electronics store. I helped with the deliveries. Plenty of experiences very similar to what has been posted here. Hoarders, filthy homes, too many pet smells, etc. Most memorable, though, was when we delivered a huge projection TV, remember those? To this guy's finished basement. This dude's basement was straight out of the 70s in every way. On the table in front of the big sectional couch was a freaking mountain of weed. I guess he and his old lady were in the process of packaging it up for sales. You'd think he'd have it cleaned up a bit before we got there. We called to let them know we were on the way. Both myself and my partner were really hoping to be tipped with a couple of buds once we had the TV set up. Nope. C'est la vie. Another memorable delivery was a whole truckload of appliances to Tony Soprano's house, or at least it might as well have been. Once all the appliances are set up and it's time for us to settle up the bill, the guy takes us into his home office, pulls a painting off the wall revealing a safe behind it, opens the safe, which is jam-packed with cash. You honestly could fit more cash into the thing. He starts peeling off hundreds from a stack and throws me and the other guys a couple hundred for a tip. Biggest tip by a long shot. I think the thing that surprised me the most when I started my job was the amount of clutter in so many homes. Rich, poor, young, or old. Hoarding, clutter, and pet smells are prevalent everywhere. The worst I've seen is an older man living in a one-room efficiency-style home. Takeout containers molded to the floor inches thick, soda and whiskey bottles 2 feet deep in the middle of the room. The toilet had obviously never been cleaned and was completely stained brown inside and out with feces and urine. The floor around it was the same from an old drunk who didn't care where anything landed. The smell was obviously really bad, and I was just glad that it was winter when I went in there. He apologized for living, quote, like a bachelor. On my first call at this one client, he answered the door in an open bathroom, under which he was naked. He and I stared at each other for a long moment in pretty mutual shock before he finally tied the bathrobe closed, mumbled something, and ran away, to get clothes as it turned out. He came back, he apologized, I fixed the client's very expensive computer and left. I brought this incident up to my boss, who said, very offhandedly, that this gentleman did that often. It was apparently his way of hazing new techs, and he was only shocked because they had sent a female technician. On the upside, the embarrassment seemed to break him of the habit, since I never heard of him doing it again. Why my boss didn't warn me, I have no idea. Silver lining, at least the hazing stops. I work as an insulator who does work for low-income houses. So I showed up to this house. First thing I noticed is about 30 lawn chairs with stuffed animals sitting in them with their own tools. Old rusty tools. And these stuffed animals weren't in the best condition. So when I finally get up to his door, I knock. He opens up, starts drooling like crazy, obviously heavily medicated. It took a little while to explain why I was there. When I finally did, I started drilling holes around the house and boom, got to the garage. There were about 300 stuffed animals hung with string nooses in their missing arms and eyes and all sorts of stuff. Needless to say, I got out of there as fast as I could. Alright, strap in for this one. This one's scary. The kids were playing Minecraft Pocket Edition on their TV, back when they didn't have all the good updates that made it more like the PC version. Creative mode didn't have very many usable items. It was horrifying. I was a licensed pet sitter. As a disclaimer, I loved my job for the most part, and the clients were great to me, but I had some interesting experiences. I worked for a lady who had no less than 24 cats. It was a one-story house with a giant outdoor fenced-in cat area attached to the house, and an outdoor cat house, which was basically a closed-in shed surrounded by a metal fence with cat houses and food. All cats were indoor or cat house cats, besides one who was fed outside in a bush. I was not to let any of the cats out of the house or the outdoor cat shed. Her house gave me the absolute chills because it was basically just a kitchen, a laundry room, and 2 nearly empty rooms with a torn-up rug and a glass door. Cats creeping in on you from every corner of the house. She fed them all canned cat food, fancy feast, all 24 of them, with cardboard plates left in random places around the house. Her cupboards were full of canned cat food from top to bottom. She had one outdoor cat that she just fed outside. It sat on my rug and stared at me during the meeting with the owner. He was kind of cute, though. I knocked on the door and someone said, "Come in." I tried, but the door was locked. I knocked again and heard, "Come in." I tried again and the door was still locked. Turned out to be the family's parrot. I once saw a woman that had built a massive castle the length of a typical bed for her bunny rabbit. It was as high as the ceiling and it had a moat and everything. That's just impressive. Oh boy, gotta do this relatively frequently. I work in mental health, so a lot of homes I go into just reek of mental illness from the outside in. Messy, dirty, and chaotic-looking homes are a big indicator of mental health issues. Some houses I've ventured into have this strong odor coming from a variety of things like uncared-for pets, dirty laundry, old food, and just general human stench. Almost always, there is both trash and clothes all over the floor, broken stuff everywhere. Because it's kids I work with, most times there are holes in walls and property damage caused by said kid when enraged. Girls typically leave sanitary pads or tampon cartridges, sometimes used, on the floor. I've seen bugs and bug traps because they're infesting the home. Went into a house once where I found out later that it was infested with scabies. Obviously, I was super paranoid about getting them for days. One girl's stairs had nail polish staining her stairs because she threw open bottles down in a rage. Typically, there's also at least one cat, usually more. These cats don't use the litter box, or if they do, it hasn't been cleaned in so long that it's just plain disgusting. So that means the cats would just pee on the piles of clothes lying on the floor. Lots of times, the kids living there will actually put on the clothes, shoes, and socks that have previously been soiled by animals. Usually the animals are in poor health. It's really quite sad. On the outside, it's easy to tell if the house inside will be in disarray. Unkept lawns, garden overgrowth, Christmas decorations still up in June, animal poop not cleaned up. That's all I can think of for now. I've gotten home on many occasions after work and gotten directly into the shower. I think the takeaway here is keep your house clean and your mental health will be better for it. I'm a probation officer, so I have to inspect people's homes and sometimes search them. First off, countless adult toys, vibrators, butt plugs, porn, which apparently still comes in magazines? Savages. Drugs. Lots of drugs. More cash than I've ever seen in my life. Earlier this week, I pulled a shoebox out from under a bed and it was completely full of stacks of cash. Lots of homes in the more poor areas have major roach infestations, which is pretty gross. Some of the circumstances that people live in make me understand why they would want to commit crimes to make money, not that that makes it okay. Two of the worst and strangest things that come to mind. Number 1, a fishing bucket with a cast net inside of it, filled with water. I accidentally stuck my hand in the water when I grabbed the net, as you couldn't see the water. I found out later that the reason a bucket of water was in his room was because of his water-based eggplant pump. Number 2, pictures of a girl covered in blood in sexy poses. Turns out they were really into periods, and she covered herself in the blood while they were having fun and took pictures. Kind of bizarre to see until realizing where the blood came from. About a decade ago, I was working a side job cleaning chimneys. Part of the job was vacuuming out the soot once we freed up the flue. I was led into the basement by an elderly woman, and there was an entire bedroom set down there covered in plastic. It was her son's, she told me. It's waiting for him when he gets back from the war. Given the amount of dust on the plastic, coupled by her age, I think she meant Vietnam. She kept trying to give me beef stew. I said we were busy, but if she can spare any to go, I'd appreciate it. I didn't eat it, but felt like I had to take it after that. I work in pest control and once went to treat a guy's house for termites. Middle-aged Italian man and his wife's body stuffed or preserved with some crazy stuff like taxidermy just in the house. She was in a bedroom closet. It wasn't her original skin, obviously, but her skeleton with wax over it to make it look like a Madame Tussauds thing or something. Yes, he could have been kidding, but he seemed dead serious. He wasn't all there, and the figure looked like the woman in pictures all around the house, so we don't treat his place anymore.
As a man, what are some of the most ridiculous double standards you've had to deal with? This girl in my office had a crush on me. Told everyone. Started doing stuff like calling me her work husband, which I said was not okay. Things got slowly worse. She started pranking me. She took a picture of me, then cut out my face and started putting it all over the office. All over. Got coworkers to start talking to me about how fun and quirky she is, etc. Wrapped up my cubicle in Christmas paper. I asked her to stop. Even spoke with her manager. Nothing. I got a card from my girlfriend for Valentine's Day. She lit it on fire and threw it in the sink in the break area. Apparently this is still cute and just her showing me she cares. I ended up quitting. How far was this lady, about to go? Hi, I bought you a bunch of chocolates. Oh, that's nice. Yeah, I like chocolates. And I just bought us a house together with your name on it. I didn't consent to this. And I have marriage papers. Oh, we're gonna be perfect. I have a girlfriend. I don't need this. I know. It's me. Me. Girlfriend material. Chapter 1. Was in a store for little girls trying to find my daughter the unicorn hair bow she was asking for. My wife, who was waiting in the car outside, overheard some women leaving the store talking about how creepy it was for a man to be there. Like, which? I'm there for my daughter. I have a very good guy friend. He's a big dude, 6 foot 6 inches. He has a little girl. He's also a single dad, so no mom to help, and freaking adores her, but cannot stand the verbal diarrhea people have when he goes to the stores to get her little girl things, i.e. a special tea set, fun fluffy toys. It got so bad that he called me to go into a Hello Kitty store with him and act like I was buying the gigantic fluffy Hello Kitty pillow for himself. Of course I did it, but I cannot imagine how he feels as a guy who just wants to get things for his little girl, but gets looked at like a creep or worse because of it. No, you know what? He's a good dad. If I got a kid, I will stare them in the eyes, just dead right in the corneas and just scream at them, "Stand aside, evil witch. I do not care for such pretenses or what judgment your eyes lay upon my soul and body. I shall purchase this Hello Kitty plush for my queen at home in her bedchambers. Now excuse me, I am Sir Dad." I wore skin-tight suits at the indoor skydive center I used to work at. The number of times I got touched inappropriately by women was crazy. Worst part? Management told me to take it as a compliment, that I should be happy with the attention. I don't work there anymore. I wasn't fired, but I just didn't want to put up with that crap, and some other unrelated crap, any longer. One time, an older 40-year-old woman spanked my behind in the wind tunnel, and I ended up forcing her out of the wind tunnel and told her to stop. I sarcastically twisted it to be about her safety. If she's so busy slapping my back door, she's not in the right body position to fly. If she continues to do so, I will be forced to stop her skydiving experience for her safety. Boy, it would be terrible if one of these slaps kind of go just like out of control. Literally, like, think about it. They're at a skydiving center, and literally this guy is like, "Okay, everyone, I need you to do this position and be careful because you don't." And like they like run up the wind tunnel and try to go in for a slap, and literally is over the edge. It's like, "Here I come, Sonny." Whoa! So, that you don't want to do that. That's not safe. Class is dismissed. And I quit. I was a male who worked in childcare for 5 years. I understood the reasoning behind it, but I had to be absolutely dead careful to be impeccable in my dealings with kids and parents. Just because anything slightly off about my vibe could spell the end of my career. I had on more than one occasion have a new parent who hadn't dealt with me before refuse to leave their kid at the school with me. I was the only staff on the premises, opting to wait in the car until a female staff member arrived. This wasn't the case with parents who were familiar with me, but new parents often just didn't trust me at all. When I resigned from the school, the other staff said how irreplaceable I was, how much the kids and staff trusted and appreciated me. I really think I did a good job. But even so, just being a male meant that I was trusted less from the get-go. I didn't hold it against anyone, but it was a double standard I ran into often. If you're a stay-at-home father, or worse, just a stay-at-home spouse as a male, there's a sizable portion of people who are going to think less of you as a man, assume you're a freeloader. While the opposite is true to an extent as well, stay-at-home mothers or housewives are far more socially accepted. People will sing the praises of stay-at-home moms, call it the hardest job in the world, ask if her husband is helping out enough at home. A man will be asked if he's on babysitting duty, will be mocked for playing Mr. Mom, will be ridiculed for staying home while his wife works out, having his wife wear the pants, criticized for not providing for his family, etc. I was out of work for a period due to my gym temporarily closing as a result of COVID restrictions, meaning my girlfriend was supporting us. I had worked for the entirety of our 15-year relationship until that point, but that didn't stop people from acting as if I was a deadbeat. As a single dad with custody of my son, the amount of times I've been asked, "Why do you have him?" on a first date, or when I start talking to a woman on a dating app, is ridiculous. I can only imagine what would happen if a single mother was asked that same question. Why is it completely acceptable for a woman to leave a man and take his kids away, no questions asked, but when a man has custody, I'm treated like I must have stolen my own child? My mom got custody of both my sister and I. My sister was smart enough to go with my dad after a while. I was still too young to realize the situation I was in. My mom inherited a bunch of money from her uncle, and we were loaded, so as a kid who got most of what I wanted, I didn't think anything of the situation. Long story short, my mom spent all her monies on illegal substances, and my dad was working like 3 jobs to pay almost $1,000 a month in child support, while my sister and I were in mom's custody. She had me on a bunch of prescriptions because she didn't know how to parent. I don't remember much of my childhood, to be honest. I ended up asking my dad to live with him, and he came and picked me up essentially across the country the next day. I went from living in a $500,000 house in Florida with my mom to a double-wide trailer in New York with my dad. He was actually a parent to me. She still spent all her money and mine and my sister's college funds that our rich uncle had set up for us. Basically, I just wanted you to know that dads can be the real heroes. I will never question why a man has custody of his kids. My dad will always be number one. When a girl is into you at the bar and you say no, holy schmoly, do they go hard out. And when you really drop the absolutely not, I've gotten hit, kicked, my drink hit out of my hand, called every name in the book. No means no, but I guess only for chicks? I had to stop hanging around for my kids' swimming lessons. They had a big window in the lounge area where you could watch your kids. I'd be grinning like an idiot, waving frantically as my boys splashed around. Just about every week, though, some Karen would give me the stink eye, or worse, an interrogation. Same would happen at the parks or the grocery store, especially when he was a toddler. They'd get right in his face and ask where his mother was. Oh, nice dad. Must be babysitting today. Ugh. Never mind the time I tried to pick him up and I wasn't his mother. They didn't know who his mother was, but they knew it wasn't me. I'd been taking him and whatnot for ages. I have a very prominent beard, which makes me stick out like a sore thumb. But yeah, I don't look familiar to them. Forget all that crap. I was at my wife's company Christmas party, and the girlfriend of her coworker straight up grabbed me, wrapped her arm around me from the side, and squeezed my back door. Then she asked my wife if it was okay. She literally didn't even say hi to me. I felt like an object. I was too surprised to do or say anything for like a solid 60 seconds. My wife didn't really register what was going on, so didn't say much of anything. The boyfriend didn't see, I guess. Anyway, flip the genders and somebody would have said or done something. When men open up about their feelings, they're often viewed as weaker, less masculine, immature, and too emotional. When women open up about their feelings, they're often viewed as more empowered, more feminine, more mature, and more in touch with their emotions. When men fail, they're often viewed as pathetic and not working hard enough. When women fail, they're often viewed as hard workers staying strong in an unfair world. When men make more money than women, there's controversy about the wage gap. When women make more money than men, those men are viewed as inadequate and lacking ambition. In my experience, many women say they want to see a man being open and emotional, but what they really want is some kind of Hollywood masculine version instead of the honest kind that might involve some ugly tears and cross-gender empathy. Also, if a woman uses it against you even a little bit in the future, they shouldn't be surprised that you'll never really open up to them honestly again. It's an uphill battle for men to open up, and once you burn that bridge, there's not really a second chance. Half of my attractiveness has always been based on how much I make. I just experienced this. My mother married into wealth on her third marriage, private jets, yachts, the works. I am mostly humble about it and keep it on the down low. I mean, it's not my money. They don't support me, and we have a terrible relationship. Started hanging around a friend that loved to boast about money and the money that other people have. He would tell women I come from money and they should lock me down. The amount of interest they had in me after that would skyrocket. It would be a normal woman for 1 second, then turn shallow, fake, and super desperate. Not going to lie, the desire felt great, but I quickly learned it's not real. I stopped being friends with him and haven't looked back. My parents don't support me, so I don't live a lavish lifestyle. So if I happen to meet a girl through family or friends or at a wealthy person party, event I'm attending with my family, once they get a dose of how non-baller I live, they're usually out. The rule is, if it's about money, that's all it will revolve around. I'm a physician. I get hit on by a lot of females, usually older women. If not directly telling me I'm attractive or easy on the eyes or something, they tell my female assistant or female residents or students who I am training, and it makes them feel very uncomfortable. Or they'll tell the nurses in pre-op or recovery unit or the anesthesiologist, etc. Imagine men saying crap like that to or about a female doctor. Pretty sure most know that's an absolutely inappropriate thing by now. I hope. I know females deal with that constantly in general, but it makes for an uncomfortable situation when you're establishing a relationship with patients. I've asked my female colleagues if they get directly hit on by patients, and thankfully for them, they've all said no. So, at least there's that. I'm a rather big guy. I lift every day, but honestly, I don't realize I'm intimidating. I'm kind of a blundering idiot. I left my lights running in my car and went inside a grocery store, came out, and my battery was dead. I had jumper cables, but needed another running car. Right then, a young woman with 2 children walked up to the car next to me. I introduced myself and started explaining my plight and asked for help. She jumped in her car quick and drove off, didn't say a word. Then I realized I probably scared the crap out of her. Random big dude walked up to her while she was alone with her kids. I called a friend and he was 30 minutes away, but on his way to help me, I'm waiting next to the car and 2 police cruisers roll up on me. Hands in the car, vehicle search, the whole 9 yards. The lady had called the cops. My buddy showed up mid-search and they harassed him too. They were convinced we were running some abduction ring or something. They finally let us jump my car and go. Even then, one of the cruisers followed me to my house. It was annoying. Lesson learned though, never ask help from a stranger. So, funny story here. I was out at the mall with my then girlfriend at the time, and we ended up inside a woman's lingerie underwear store. Not the famous one that you can imagine, but it definitely had the same feel or vibe to it. They had just opened their doors and had a promotion. If you try on a bra, you can take it for half price. Limit 1 per customer. Cue my idea. I try on my girlfriend's bra size as a joke and get her 2 bras. That she'd pick out, of course, for the price of 1. No brainer, am I right? I asked the store clerk where the dressing rooms are so I could try it on. I was adamant about following the rule, and she says only women are allowed to try on the merchandise. I even offered to walk out of the dressing room with it on to prove a point. Trust me, I would have made it fit. Sadly, she didn't go for it, and I walked out of there with a laughing girlfriend and a burning hatred for that store and their unfair rules. I had a female security guard search me up and down, touching my no-no square full on at a nightclub, at an entrance check-in. Didn't do that to my girlfriend who was with me, or a male security guard didn't try the same thing with my girlfriend. Why was I searched? If a male guard searched a woman's no-no square full on, yeah, good luck. And that was like 2 years ago, so metal detectors are a thing. I told my girlfriend at that time, and she just laughed. So, I have a story in the opposite direction. I had been at work all day, and I came home to my girlfriend, at the time, on Omegle, intoxicated, and zipping up her sweatshirt. Basically, I came home and caught her flashing her swanky billies at strangers on the internet after she had stolen and drank all of my beer I had in the fridge is on my computer. She wasn't working, and I was paying all the bills, so I said, "Freak this!" Unplugged the computer and told her, "You're done on the computer, you need to sober up." This resulted in her trying to smash the computer screen, roundhouse kicking the TV next to the computer and breaking it, and trying to pull a bookcase down on me. So I picked her up and carried her out of the house. The whole time, she smashed me in the head with a can of Campbell's tomato soup. I deposit her outside, and she promptly smashes the window on the door. So I go aside and force her away from the house so she doesn't cut herself on the glass. And she pulls out her phone and starts calling the cops. At this point, I pull out my phone and call the cops. And I'm talking to the female dispatcher about what happened, and I hear the girlfriend off in the background telling them she fears for her life and that I was standing next to her and threatening to pull the plug while I was on the phone with the other operator. The cops show up, female officer goes talk to her, male officer comes talk with me, Within a few minutes, I see the female officer force my girlfriend into the back of the car, and the male officer excuses himself from me and goes to talk to the female officer. I overhear a bit of the conversation, and it's basically the female officer stating that my girlfriend is obviously drunk, that she lied to the 911 dispatcher and confirmed with the one that I had called that I wasn't anywhere near the girlfriend while she was accusing me of threatening her, and the real zinger? The girlfriend told her that I drug her out of the house and that the whole time she was hitting me in the head with a can of soup. I just wouldn't expire despite her best efforts, and it wasn't fair. So I got referred to someone who could help me, a hotline, and my ex got locked up for the weekend as it happened on a Friday. Otherwise it would have been a 12-hour release without a no contact clause on her release. Long story short, I bailed her out on Monday at the cost of $900. And things were up and down for the next 3 or 4 months, at which point we went to court for a hearing, and the judge announced, "She's such a small girl, and they've been living together all this time, so obviously she wasn't really any threat. I'm going to charge her with a disturbance of peace with a $40 fine, and she's free to go." Of course, I had a black eye that day because she had gotten intoxicated and tried to hurt herself that night before, and I basically pinned her down so she couldn't. So she decided to punch me in the face a good 8 or 9 times as a reward. Thankfully, I managed to get her evicted out of my place a month later, but only because I paid a bunch of money to the state to enforce it. My brother-in-law loves basketball and coached women's teams for years. He told me that women actually listen and follow the plays much more than men, so it's a real treat to coach women over men. He had to give it up because of all the bullcrap going on within the community and him being a male coaching girls. The only people that really suffer here are the girls that had an amazing coach, but the gossip bags just can't keep their hen-like beaks shut. My ex is a bartender. I am a drummer in a decently popular band in my town. So we get a lot of attention because of this, and both jobs require us to use that to our advantage. Tips for her, and keeping people coming to our shows for me. I've never had a problem with her flirting for tips. In fact, I encouraged it. I also work in the restaurant industry, so I know how it works. But God forbid a girl came up to me to say, "Great show," I'd be expected to just walk away and not interact. That's why she's my ex. This isn't my story. This happened at school while I was skipping every class I had that day, went off smoking the herbs. My youthful stupidity. Anyway, there was an incident at a school where one of the girls had health issues and had a seizure and stopped breathing. At the school, there has to be at least one person who can provide first aid, and he was male. He had to give her CPR until the paramedics arrived. Thankfully, she lived, but the guy who gave first aid had a complaint by the girl's parents as they didn't think it was appropriate for an adult male to give CPR, and citing that kiss of life is inappropriate. He saved their daughter's life, and he was thanked by getting fired for it. No praise, no thanks, nothing.
People of Reddit, what was the most not safe for work event you ever stumbled upon in high school? Not me, but a friend of mine who was a yearbook photographer. She was a rail-thin, awkward, geeky high schooler and was asked to photograph a day in the life of the swim team. Our school had the football fever, and so other sports were always trying to get more than a few mentions in the yearbook packed with dozens of football shots. So my friend showed up to the swim team practice and later state tournament. She was asked to join them later at their victory party, which was at someone's house with its own pool and hot tub. When she got there, most of the team was already drunk, and not an adult in sight. There were also a lot of girlfriends of the team there, and more than once, my friend was asked to join them naked in the hot tub. Fun was pretty freely flowing, and she strived constantly to get acceptable photos instead of the wanton depravity around her. At one point, some naked girl was chugging while she was in the cowboy position, screwing on top of her boyfriend while everyone cheered her on. They kept begging my friend to take photos, and she refused in horrified shock. Some of the guys got really handsy with her until finally she picked a time when they were distracted, and she left. She later was crying to her best friend because she felt so stressed out, and it was nothing like she expected. Sort of like showing a 10-year-old Caligula when they were expecting Toy Story 2. Only one photo made it to yearbook from that party, a hot tub photo where she had to crop out the beer keg and everyone's body was below the waterline so you couldn't tell they were naked. My high school had to ban blankets after 2 freshmen were caught having fun under one in the middle of the art hallway. I walked into a bathroom after a fight. Broken mirror, blood smeared on the wall and floor, water everywhere, probably unrelated to the fight, and a lot of bloody tissues in the sink. Oh, and there was a turd in the urinal. I hope that was unrelated to the fight. Someone got the crap kicked out of him. A freshman got pleasured by his girlfriend under the table in the cafeteria during lunch. Someone sitting near them noticed what was happening, took a video, and posted it online. The administration quickly found out, the video was taken down, and all 3 involved were suspended. I ran cross-country in high school. Sometimes during practice, we would run through trails in the woods surrounding the high school. One day right after school ended, we started running down the trails and stumbled upon 2 students having fun. Judging by their reactions, I don't think they were expecting a group of 15 guys to run by as they were getting it on. High school bus hit a deer. Police were called. Deer was shot 3 times in front of the bus to put it down. Watched it from the parking lot while skipping school. We had a girl who would sit in the back of the bus and seemed to always have a different dude sit next to her. Turns out she was giving guys pleasure for a small price. Had a guy run through the school completely naked. High school, by the way. Even ran up and slapped some teacher's butt. Haven't heard of him since, but it was like 5+ years ago. Legend has it that a guy in my sophomore or junior year used to sit next to his girlfriend and get pleasure during English class. A sophomore at my school gave a freshman a donut filled with white sauce. He got criminal charges. I have no idea what the criminal charges were. I do know that he got fired from his job and expelled. Walked into a bathroom after school and found a guy and a girl about to go to town. She had her shirt off and skirt up. He had his pants on. I caught them just before the moment of insertion. I said nothing. I would have let them to it, except all of the bathrooms on campus except this one were always locked shortly before last bell. So I silently walked to a urinal, calmly did my business, properly washed my hands. By the time I went to leave, the girl was hiding in a stall and the guy was waiting by the door. I shrugged at the guy. Guy shrugged back. I left and heard the door lock behind me. Not one of us said anything or made a sound during the entire exchange. Edit. For everyone calling it a power move, I appreciate it, but I just didn't want to have to pee in the bushes. We always threw house parties at my friend's house. One day I went to grab my jacket from one of the rooms and I heard some moaning and groaning, so I thought it was just a couple hooking up. I flipped the lights on because I couldn't find my jacket and saw that 3 of the track girls were butt naked, finger-banging and eating each other out. Instead of just standing there and watching or trying to participate, my nerdy high school self said, "Hi," waved, and said, "Have fun," as I walked out, giving them privacy. Later on that year, I ended up dating one of the girls and would always try to mention it and maybe try to get a threesome going. Never happened though. She said it was just a drunk moment. We had 2 people banging under the band bus in the mud at a contest. No one thought it would be a bad idea for the cross-country team to have thin white uniforms until we had a race in a thunderstorm. So many flashbacks of eggplants swaying with each stride. This next one's pretty violent, so fair warning. There was a kid. We'll call him CB. He was notoriously a bad kid. Always in fights, getting kicked out of school, etc. Anyways, his locker wasn't next to mine, but it was really close. He and I never had problems because I purposefully avoided him. One day, another kid, we will call AC, and CB got into an argument. It led to a pushing and shoving match and some crap talking, but got separated really quickly. The next day, AC was walking past our lockers, and CB pulled a literal crowbar out of his locker, ran up behind AC, and hit him in the back of the head so hard that blood hit me in the face. Part of AC's scalp literally half folded over the back of his head as he was on the floor. CB started hitting him in the back and the back of the head with it. Other students jumped on him and held him down. An ambulance took AC to the hospital. His skull was fractured and he had broken ribs. I had to get checked out because of the blood exposure. No idea where CB went, but I never saw him again. Not really not safe for work, just my most vivid high school memory. It was the biggest poop I'd ever seen. Just one huge log, to my memory the size of the toilet bowl. It definitely didn't fit down the hole and had to be removed by a janitor. Everyone told their friends about it, and one by one, we all went and checked it out. Also, no toilet paper in the bowl. All that was there was the one big, fat, legendary turd. It physically hurts me to think about how that came out of a butthole. I would just like to add that I am touched and humbled by all of your poo-related stories. In this time of division and opposition, let us remember we are united by poo. Holy crap, I had the same thing in middle school. Someone made such a girthy, long, robust turd that it had braced itself end-to-end across the entire rim of the toilet above the water. It was incredible. It reeked. It was like God himself had wedged it in there. We missed the first 10 minutes of class as every boy shuffled giddily through the boys' restroom to the big stall where that glorious poop lay in state. To remember it now was easily 3 to 4 inches in diameter and almost a foot long, just freaking remarkable. The water was even flushed away several times to demonstrate there was no trickery. A teacher rushed in and used a plunger to try and tap it in. It held once, twice, a third time. We were buckled with laughter. It finally broke, and both pieces landed in such a way that still prevented them from going down. Absolute highlight in middle school. I went to a small party at my friend's house. My girlfriend and I got there late. We went in and noticed nobody was in the living room. Weird. They said they'd be here. Start walking to the back and I could hear several voices in the bedroom. I just opened the door and there were 7 of my friends just having a casual group fun. Not me specifically, but 2 kids in my Catholic high school banged in the bathroom and someone caught them and videotaped it. They posted it online. Our school made the news and now they measure girls' skirts if they look too high, as well as banning phones. Because yeah, girls' skirts were the problem here. In middle school, the health teach went to show a video on the projector and I guess he had porn on his video player. He offered everyone A's to keep quiet. He was fired, then went to work for a Catholic school. This was junior high, but one kid who we suspected was gay gave another kid who we did not suspect was gay head in the bathroom stall. And for what? A hollow foil Clefairy Pokemon card. Man has his priorities straight. I went to a boarding school my freshman year of high school, and a few weeks in, I volunteered to help walk our librarian's dog for her while her leg was healing after an injury. So I was walking this huge dog through the woods around campus when he suddenly sniffed the air and just ripped the leash out of my hands and took off into the underbrush. I started chasing after him when I heard screaming and yelling. I thought, oh god, this dog mauled someone and I'm going to get expelled! Broke through a clearing and there were 5 half-naked upperclassmen trying to put their clothes on and scatter while this dog is joyously barking and jumping up on and licking them. Too long didn't read, accidentally interrupted group fun in the woods with my librarian's dog. I guess since so many people were asking, yes, it was a co-ed school, and yes, both sexes represented. Thumbs up for diversity. Went to teacher's room to get some papers that my Portuguese teacher had forgotten and stumbled at my gym and biology teachers kissing each other really hard over the meeting table. I mean, they didn't even notice me. And oh, it was a Catholic school, and they were both married, by the way. My face when I returned to class without the papers must have been priceless. A girl, freshman, went viral on Snapchat because the guy she was giving head to recorded her and said it was terrible during the recording. I'm a teacher who teaches in a high school. First day on the job, we had 2 kids beating cheeks in the back of one of my shop cars. Should specify I'm an automotive teacher. Pretty not safe for work if you ask me. Okay, 2 stories, 1 not safe for work, but still messed up. Janitor in elementary school died while mopping the floor, and somehow this didn't get around the entire school, and my entire class saw them taking his covered up body out the front door. Another was walking in on several people giving head in the band room. It became a daily thing, and I should have known to also knock on the practice room doors before entering. We had many PCs in our school, and every computer room had a projector. So once when the teacher was ill and no replacement came, we were in that room. Someone started the projector and quickly found out that every porn site he tried is blacklisted, but playing from USB apparently works fine. We later found out not only are the connections whitelisted, but also fully monitored. Not long after the movie show with sound and everything started, the IT tech guy comes with a substitute teacher. That internet search history was apparently enough for them to suddenly have a substitute teacher for us. Was walking around outside my high school and saw a dude leaning up against a wall getting head. They didn't see me, so I quietly turned around and walked away. Girl gave head to a guy and his friends filmed it. It was the talk of the school and she changed schools. 2 years later, she came back and gave head to a different guy by the same dumpster. No one filmed it this time. Some kid at a party got blackout wasted and crapped himself. In the middle of the crowd, he took his pants down and slipped in it, proceeded to army crawl to try and make it out, but just smeared it everywhere. He is still known as the party pooper. Godspeed, party pooper. In band before a football game, I walk into the percussion room to hang with the homies. Everyone is huddled around this dude in the corner of the room laughing, so of course I walk over to check it out. Turns out the dude was showing everyone how tiny his eggplant is and everyone was so fascinated. Yeah, it was really, really small, like from the tip of your pinky to the first knuckle down. I've never seen anything like it. Freshman year of high school, football team is out practicing. A senior varsity player came to the freshman locker room, cut all the locks off of our lockers, and stole our clothes. Nice enough to take wallets and phones, etc. out of pockets and leave them in the lockers, though. Idiot didn't realize the hallway cameras had him the whole time. Most of us chose not to shower until we got home and, as a team, proceeded to leave in groups in undershirts and boxers or no shirts and boxers after getting a call our rides were there. Small town, small school, so ultimately he was just benched for a few games, suspended for a day or two, and his parents had to buy a bunch of padlocks. In middle school, some kids walked in and started having fun in the stall next to me while I was pooping. Eventually, they smelt my presence. Oh man, I've got a good one for this. So I'm in high school theater class and I've been helping the teacher out with a lot of tasks like setting up the green room and stuff. Just little helpful stuff. Well, apparently one of us left the door unlocked and unattended for a little too long. In our green room were 2 big blue couches that were the most uncomfortable things I had ever sat on. Teacher comes running into the room from the hall and says, "Hey, I think someone is in the green room. Go with me so I can have a witness." Thinking nothing of it, I go. We stand by the door and someone is most definitely in there making some pretty unusual sounds. I realize what the sound is a half second before the teacher throws the door open to 2 kids from my class getting down on that couch. I only had like 2 seconds of view time before the teacher screams, "Good golly, Miss Molly! And slams the door. I sat outside that door crying from laughing for about 20 minutes before they knocked on the door to be let out, realizing we had the stage completely locked down. The look on their faces when the principal let them out and led them to his office will forever be in my mind. Can you imagine? Knee deep, about to blow, and from over your shoulder, "Good golly, Miss Molly!" I dream of it sometimes and still wake up laughing. Not me, but a few freshmen encountered sophomores having fun on a hill my school had for cross-country and I think football. And then someone marked that hill on Google Maps. What happens in the locker room should stay in the locker room. With that said, I once walked in on a kid shoving a crucifix up his butt on a dare from his friends. Catholic school, eh? The janitor didn't cordon off the area when someone spilled a large half-gallon of milk. One student ran into the cafeteria, slipped and busted his butt. The janitor was suspended for 1 day. A bunch of guys in the athletics class got mad at a kid for mine for cheating during dodgeball, so they walked into the locker room butt naked and whipped him with towels. I just walk in and see someone's dong flipping around like a corrupted body part in a PS1 game before he leaps off the bench and goes ape on the guy. I noped the heck out and waited in the hallway with everyone else. Before anyone asks why didn't I or anyone else help, the coaches were nowhere to be found and we were scrawny freshmen against football and wrestling players in good shape. The guy eventually comes out drenched in sweat, calls us jerks, then kicked on one of our backpacks. 2 people were caught having fun behind the curtain on the gym stage by the Master of Custodial Arts, or janitor if you want to be a jerk about it. He said hi to both and walked out. Dave was cool. A junior boy filmed 2 sophomore girls having fun, and, of course, he made copies and passed them around. One copy landed in the dean's hands, and she called both girls and their parents in and freaking watched it. Yeah, because that's not gonna traumatize anybody. A guy hanging from the theater rafters by one arm. Like, by choice? What's the not safe for work part? Naked and covered with mashed potatoes? In 11th grade English, the desks were in a U shape, so some students were facing each other from across the room. This is important later on. So I had a few girls in my class I thought were attractive, and there was this one girl who was a cheerleader. She sat directly across from me so I could see her face rather than the back of her head. So anyways, because I was able to see her face, I was also able to see the rest of the front of her body. So one day while my teacher was reading us a book, this girl was wearing a fairly short skirt. I happened to just glance and saw up it. Being a 16 to 17-year-old, I'd glanced here and there. Eventually she noticed, and you would think that when you notice someone looking, you'd close your legs. The opposite happened. I'd been wearing athletic shorts as it was a hot April day, so this girl is spreading her legs whilst wearing a short skirt and a thong. She kept looking at me and kept spreading until she couldn't spread much further. I obviously had a tent, and I'm almost certain she must have seen, because she was biting her lip, and I swear to God, I could have sworn she'd moved her thong over just enough to show herself slightly. Now keep in mind, there was maybe 10 people in that class, including me, and the side I was on had 5 or so of us, and was majority girls with the exception of me and a gay guy, so she was definitely showing me. Being awkward as heck though, I never bothered to talk to her much or anything, so I never got any chance to ask her out or anything, but that was probably the hottest thing I'd seen in high school. Walked over to the local church where my buddy and resident school 10 out of 10 were last seen. I start using a small flashlight because it was dark as heck and heard rustling under some pine trees. I heard whispering, and being sober just flat out yelled, "If you 2 are screwy, just let me know so I can turn around." Yeah, we are, but... My buddy Sean walks out, shirt covering himself. "Can you find me a condom, dude?" I walked back to the house, found a condom in my buddy's room, took it back, and laid it down where I got to see the 10 out of 10 naked. Thanks, bro. 11th grade, everyone. My high school had a lock-in every year where you basically stayed at the high school and weren't allowed to leave from like 6 p.m. to midnight. They were usually pretty boring and stupid as heck because students had to bring their own consoles and could only bring E-rated games and PG-rated movies. Anyways, there was an upstairs to my school, but it was only 2 rooms. One of them was locked and the other movies were playing in. I was watching movies upstairs, and when I went to use the bathroom up there, I opened the door to a full-on group fun session. I mean like 8 kids, and it wasn't even that big of a bathroom. I don't understand why they wouldn't lock the door. I really wish they did so I didn't see that. I then went downstairs to the locker room where a bunch of kids, this was the boys' locker room, but there were like 10 guys and 10 girls playing Truth or Dare. I was a really shy and unpopular kid, so stuff like that was weird for me. One of the girls saw me come in and dared another girl to go down on me in front of them. I got really embarrassed and ran out of there as fast as I could. By that time, it was only like 10, so I talked to the person running it and told them that I threw up and they let me leave. I never went to another one of those stupid things after that. In English class, 10th grade, I was sitting next to this dude. For storytelling purposes, named Chad. Chad was always a little weird and never really paid attention in class. He preferred to go on gag websites like Google Gravity and whatnot for the entirety of class, occasionally talking to me and showing off what weird stuff he found. That was all good. Then one day, I looked over just out of curiosity for what weird stuff he might have found that day. First thing I saw was that his screen was going through the standard Windows Update reboot screen. Then I saw his desk bouncing up and down somewhat. I just figured he was bouncing his legs with some ADHD-type energy while he was waiting for his computer to finish updating, so I go back to my work. A few minutes later, he apparently started making sounds. I was unaware of this as I was watching YouTube. These sounds were heard by the group of talkative girls sitting a couple of seats over. They loudly complained a lot to the teacher, so the teacher walked over and tried talking to Chad. When Chad saw the teacher walking over, he went into panic mode and tried to stealthily hide what he was doing. Naturally, he failed spectacularly and sent his desk forward and actually helped it fall on accident when he tried to save it. So Chad was sitting in his seat, one hand trying to pull his desk back up while the other was desperately grasping the zipper region of his pants. I only learned what happened after the fact, as I have a spectacular ability to ignore what's going on around me when I watch YouTube. However, I found out that he got suspended for a week. Chad went down as a legend around my school as the man who rubbed one out during English. He was highly respected among all the boys in the school for the next 2 years, and his reputation spread to the surrounding schools so that when I went to sporting events, the opposing teams would ask me about him. In home ec, a kid pulled his eggplant out and set it on his desk and got the teacher to look at it. Nothing happened, and she laughed it off. A few weeks later, another kid in the same class crushed up a Tic Tac and the teacher watched him do a line of it. She called the police, had drug dogs come in, and had the kid suspended for a week or two. Same teacher made us read aloud what we were reading in study hall once. Bad idea. It was a bunch of tips on how to give head from 17 magazine, or a similar magazine. Each one of us had to take a turn reading one, each person yelling the tip to all who could hear. Freshman year, our chemistry teacher taught us how to make gunpowder. We were supposed to light it all in the flame hood, made a huge batch, put it in a 2-liter bottle, and blew it up outside. Ironically, cops weren't called for that one. Drew a bunch of eggplants on rival team school buses during a basketball tournament. It was orchestrated so no one could tell who did it. Police got called in. It's a small town with 3 officers. 2 stayed inside with the kids, 1 had to scrub the eggplants off the buses. Result, a bunch of kids had to wait in the gym for a few hours, and we got interrogated. No one confessed, so nothing happened there. Not safe for work, but those and a few unmentionable events got us out of senior year a week early. The administration waited until a Friday and told us we were done with high school and to not come back until graduation. That was kinda cool, but we didn't get to have prank week. This was before cell phones had passwords. Found a phone. Looked at the picture to see who it was. Saw a video of a girl spreading peanut butter on her genitals and having her dog lick it up. This didn't happen to me specifically, but it happened in the class that I happened to be in. I was in my theater class and we were practicing a play that we were going to do during one of the periods of school. 15 of us were on the stage with the theater teacher working on our part. The 15 of us were robots that worked together as a machine, and the other 4 went with the student teacher because they were the humans of the play. They went to one of the lecture halls and the student teacher flipped on the lights and they caught 2 people making out in the area, and the girl was giving the guy pleasure. Needless to say, the 2 got out of there real quick with the guy zipping himself up. Went to a private all-boys school. My senior year, I walked into the band practice hall on a Saturday afternoon to find 2 guys going at it. One was elbow deep in the other's butt. And that's how I found out what fisting is. I didn't report them, but I did call the other one Kermit for the rest of the year. We once had to work with iPads, and when I turned mine on, the background image was a furry, and when I went to the internet browser, it was on Hentai Haven. Of course, I quickly backed out of the site before anyone could see it. I must say, the Chad who looked up porn on a school iPad had some cojones on him. I think one of the most I've ever laughed in school was when someone managed to connect to the projector in the assembly hall and play Shrek is Love, Shrek is Life, followed by Ram Ranch. I had my goon sneak into school to take down all the bells as a prank. He didn't know the difference between fire bells and class bells and took down both. That made the work environment not safe, and is why the police were called. I don't know which one is the most not safe for work experience, but each one has their own merit. What kind of schools y'all go to?
Redditors who've met the parents/family of the person you intend to marry and then decided against marrying them after meeting them. What happened? I was staying at the girlfriend's parents' house. First morning, father was out feeding animals. Girlfriend and her mother were getting breakfast ready. I saw my girlfriend put what I thought was an artificial sweetener in her father's coffee. I asked if I could try one. She explained to me it was not a sweetener but a chill pill. They kept her father dosed. I decided right there and then I was not going to be part of this family. So many years ago, I was engaged to a big heaping bowl of crazy. I was also in the military, in a rather selective unit. We had just gotten back from a deployment, and I'll freely admit that I wasn't a ray of sunshine to be around. When we first got back, our training tempo was pretty mild, so we could adjust being back to life in the States. One thing was really weird though. I'd see her every weekend, and for the weekend and a few days after, I wouldn't be feeling great. I wasn't sick or anything. My mind would just be foggy. Then she decided to move up to where I could see her throughout the week. The fogginess went away for a while, but I'd still be getting these weird things going on with my body. I stopped doing the deed almost completely. I always felt like I was dragging my body. It was really weird because I was young and in phenomenal shape. One week, we had a 3-day-long field exercise towards the end of the week. She was freaking angry, like more angry than I've ever seen her. She really didn't want me to be gone for that long. Well, tough luck. This is my job. My unit didn't screw around when it came to training. We're talking parachuting in, you sleep in a hole in the ground, lots and lots of patrolling and land navigation, followed by some live fire training in a shooting house. I didn't see her the day prior because I wanted to make sure my gear was set up and get a good night's sleep. I was feeling off, but not too bad the first day. Day 2, I'm a ball of freaking nerves. I didn't know what was wrong, but something wasn't freaking right with my body. On the last day, we were supposed to attack a building with live ammo. We would be clearing rooms and taking down the targets. I was shaking. I couldn't control my hands. I was jittery as heck. I had to pull my team leader aside and show him that I couldn't be trusted to hold a weapon. They drove me from the field to the hospital. I was admitted they started looking for a neurological disorder. After a few days, my symptoms went away and they couldn't find anything, so they let me get back to work. I started seeing my fiancé again and the fog came back. I called my team leader and my first sergeant and I made an appointment to go back to the hospital the next Monday. One morning, the Sunday before I was supposed to go back to the hospital, my fiancé was making me coffee, but got interrupted by her cat doing something. On the counter was a bottle of her dad's sertraline and a small pile of powder. She had been dosing me with antidepressants. I was mad enough to end her right there and then. I had jumped out of an aircraft while on mind-altering substances. If I had tried to tough out the shooting house, I could have hurt someone. Not to mention being on unauthorized medication while holding a security clearance, I thought I was developing a neurological disease because my fiancé was poisoning me. I told my TL and my first sergeant what happened. They cleared it with the rest of the guys. I didn't end up making a criminal complaint. What she did was commit multiple felonies because I just wanted that psycho out of my life as quickly as possible. Her excuse was that she thought I was depressed after coming back from, combat. So she figured she could dose me so I would be happy, not realizing that's not how that crap works. I dodged a freaking Minuteman missile with that lunatic. A guy friend actually convinced me to break up with my boyfriend because of the family trends. My ex's father was always away on business, and his mom was a super cute, bubbly teacher. She would go out with her female teacher friends at night, and the dad would get super jealous and have massive phone fights. My ex and his sibling became super possessive of their mom and hated their dad to an unhealthy level. They thought both their parents were probably having affairs. My ex was 18 and had never done a single chore in his entire life. Their pets crap all over the house, and the mom cleaned everything, even my ex's bedroom. Our mutual guy friend took me to lunch one day and was like, "Seriously? Is this the future you want? I mean, he's a cool guy, but the dude is seriously a terrible boyfriend and will be the worst husband." Turns out he had been cheating on me the whole time with 2 girls that were best friends. They just switch off days they commit the deed with him. I married him anyway, but from the day I met his mom, she hated me. She would rave about how much she adored his brother's girlfriends, but hated me. I tried so hard, but she didn't let up. My husband is her favorite and she has an unhealthy attachment to him, so I think it's not personal and more along the lines of no girl would ever be good enough for him in her eyes. She's a witch though. She once faked a severe panic attack to keep her son's attention on her, not me. The doctors at the hospital could see right through it though and knew she was faking. She called my husband the night before our wedding and told him if he married me, he would be miserable for the rest of his life. When we went home for Christmas, she tried to hook him up with her coworker, her married son, while I was right there. We rescued a shelter dog, and shortly after he broke a leg due to malnutrition in his neglectful home. She told everyone that I didn't want to pay the vet bill and asked the vet to euthanize him. She laughed at me when she learned I was depressed. She told me I was being dramatic when I started crying after receiving news of my grandpa's passing. She tells everyone that I come from a poor family and married my husband so I wouldn't have to work. I don't work right now because we just moved for his job. In reality, my parents are wealthier than her. She tries to belittle me, but it honestly doesn't bother me at all anymore. I laugh when she does, and it really makes her mad. Intended to marry my ex, but after meeting his mom a few times, I really couldn't do it. She was extremely possessive of her son and never smiled when I'm with them. I was the blame for her son not eating properly. I always cooked healthy food for him, sleeping properly. He worked 16 hours a day. Dressed properly. I ironed his shirts for him when he was too busy to do it. Any blame you can think of. She was also a single mom who has had 2 sons with 2 different ex-husbands and had lots of drama with both. She wanted to retire at 45 but didn't have a stable income. So my ex had to give her money every month so she can retire and not work. All in all, I couldn't see myself dealing with the mom, so I eventually broke it off before it was too late. You know, the more I'm looking at the reasons that the mom is so angry at this wife-to-be, it sounds more like that lemon grab from Adventure Time. It's like, how dare you feed my son vegetables and good meats? This is unacceptable! His mom was incredibly overbearing and controlled what he couldn't do by constant guilt tripping and made up stories. She would drape himself on him for snuggles to the point where it was awkward. I have children of my own, and I don't clasp them to my chest and sigh about how wonderful they are when their friends are over. And she would make sly digs at me all the time. What I was wearing, how I looked, why we were going out, how much money was being spent on me. We always split everything 50-50 at my insistence, by the way, and just generally made me feel like crap. He just took it. When I brought it up, he was just super passive. It was like, well, she's my mom. She's just overprotective. He had a sister, actually, who had left home, but was clearly the favorite. Whenever she came home, he was forgotten and shrugged off to the point where it was actually mean. Again, I brought it up to him and he was all, she's just excited to see her daughter. His dad was a very passive, albeit kind man himself, who just seemed to roll over with whatever his wife wanted, and I guess my boyfriend learned that from him. She was heading for classic MIL from hell territory. There was no talking my boyfriend round. He batted my concerns and feelings on the matter away like they were nothing. I realized that would be our marriage, and I knew I couldn't live that way. It obviously wasn't the only reason I split from him, but it was a key issue. I have no regrets when we split. He very quickly started dating and then married a local girl. They were divorced within 2 years, and from what I could gather from mutual friends, his mother was pivotal in the failure. That's the second one. What's with all these horror stories from moms? Are they all like the stepmother from Cinderella? Yes, good. You'll stay with me for eternity. You'll never find love. Oh no, now I'm just turning to Tim Curry for a second. You'll never find love. We weren't at the marriage stage of things yet. Gay marriage wasn't legal back when this happened. But we had been dating for over a year and were considering moving in together. Apparently, my girlfriend had always used a gender-neutral nickname for my name anytime she talked about me to her family, and she never corrected them when they said he. But after a year of us dating, we were finally going to have a family dinner with them. She had already had dinner with my parents, and they loved her. And when I showed up, her parents had a really sour look in their face. Apparently, she hadn't told him that I am a girl until about 2 hours before the dinner was supposed to happen. Her parents weren't exactly against the idea, just severely disappointed that they wouldn't be getting grandkids. Girlfriend was an only child, and that soured the mood for dinner. Honestly, I'm sure they would have come around eventually, but that whole incident told me that my girlfriend wasn't ready to be out of the closet yet. One of the discussions during dinner was, don't tell grandma, and I wasn't going to move in with someone just to be the roommate to most of the people they know. I told her that I'd rather live by myself for now, and she got upset, and we had a fight and ended up breaking up. Dated this girl for 2 years. She was cute, but a little off, as in she would cut herself superficially, then talk about how much better she felt. Whatever, I was 19, and if you look past that, she was great. She was very close to her grandfather. I had met him a few times before. Sweet guy. One day she gets the news that he's dying, so we drive to see him off. Meeting the rest of the family? This is where it gets fun. Her mom didn't strike me as particularly crazy at first, but once I sat down to talk with her, she started getting overly sappy, talking about marriage, but no kids! Kids are the worst thing that can happen to you! Okay. The aunt just wanted to argue with everyone about everything and belittle her grown adult nieces and nephews. Her sister was very obviously a naughty worker and almost always had some illegal substances around the bottom ring of one nostril or the other. She also brought a bouquet that completely filled the tiny hospital room. The lady passing next to Grandpa was not amused. Her brother offered me a slew of illegal substances while I was there. Much appreciated, but calm down, man. And as Grandpa laid there, struggling to hold on to the last threads of life, he got to watch his entire family fall apart, mostly arguing over which of his possessions would go to who. There was also some rumors that Grandpa did an unspeakable act to some of his family members. This made his bedside as well. It was probably the most messed up last days a person has ever experienced. I left early because I couldn't stand it anymore. Too much drama over a dying man. I had been contemplating how to break up with her the following few weeks after all that, when she started hanging out with her manager at work, and after work, getting rides homes with him, and more. And doing the deed. Good riddance. Meeting his family was one of the last straws, and certainly brought up huge red flags. His father was incredibly cruel to him growing up. My boyfriend was an only child that his father never wanted. His dad was obsessive and needy towards his mother, and basically wanted all her attention at all times, and was jealous of the child they had together. I could see some of these obsessive and needy tendencies in my boyfriend, and I knew he didn't want kids, and I did. If we had kids, I was afraid he would react how his father had. Maybe not in a cruel way, but I was still worried. We ended up breaking up for other reasons, but this definitely influenced it. My ex's mom was a round, red-haired, red-faced she-beast who never spoke below a yell. She also had a very unhealthy and incestuous attachment to the son I was dating. I was young and dumb and stayed longer than I should have. She was a huge witch to me and encouraged him to be cruel. But I began to question the relationship when she made him take her bra off for her in front of me. It was a weird display of dominance. Ugh, massive bullet dodge there. So I understand this display of dominance. Yes, it is extremely weird. But I have to admit, like, the one little detail that is making me giggle is that she never spoke below a yell. What is that like? So are they all like sitting at the table and it's like, oh, hey, Mom, do you mind passing the salt? Yes, of course, my beautiful boy. Have some salt. Hey, can you take this off for me? I make her sound like Jerry Seinfeld. I'm a mother now. It's not exactly the reason, but it set us down that path. My longtime girlfriend was a little borderline crazy, little hints of it here and there, but she managed to hide it. I finally went home with her after we got engaged, and her mom would sit in the back at the kitchen table with a little black and white TV playing solitaire, had no friends, complained constantly, isolated herself, and had little flashes of paranoia where the slightest thing was perceived as a major insult that would send her down a day-long sulk session. She also looked kind of like my girlfriend, but did not age well and was pretty heavy. I saw the future. It clicked with me that this was what I was getting into, that my girlfriend harbored all these same traits, both physical and mental, and was working super hard to hide it all. I decided that weekend I need to break it off. Plot twist, as I worked up the courage over the next few weeks, she canceled the wedding because she is a lesbian. Plot twist, I'm gay, she's not. Didn't necessarily intend to marry her, but it was on the table and was where we both wanted to go, I later found out. This girl was completely amazing and my best friend in the world. Unbelievably kind and inquisitive, we fell in love just a couple of months into our friendship and dove headfirst into a relationship once we found out about the other's feelings. It moved very quickly, and I loved every second of it until I met her parents. Her parents were extremely wealthy and extremely weird. Her dad was a high-strung workaholic who seemed to do anything he could to stay away from his family, be it traveling for work or training for marathons. But her mom, oh boy, obsessed with everything vegan and holistic, had a blatant hatred and distrust for anything artificial, especially medication, extremely untrusting, and would flip from hot to cold on a dime. When she found out that the girl I was seeing, the baby of the family, and I were intimate, she began essentially bullying and shaming her for it. She pressured her heavily to give extremely personal and violating details about her personal life, and then would flip her crap when my girlfriend would cave and tell her. She found every possible excuse to shelter her and keep her as her little baby. Mind you, this was in college when I was 22 and she was 21. Eventually, her parents started doing things like dropping in on campus. This was when I was at Penn and her parents were a 15-minute drive away. Calling her to make sure she wasn't sleeping over at my place and guilt-tripping her to stay at home as much as possible to make sure that her 21-year-old daughter wasn't drinking or doing the deed with her boyfriend of about 9 months at the time. I thought it was a me issue and became very depressed, wondering what was wrong with me. But it turned out that it was just the way her mom was with my girlfriend and always had been. Her 3 older sisters were all free to do pretty much whatever, just not her. I couldn't take it anymore. We split. Didn't see another choice. We literally couldn't be together unless she wanted to cut her mom off, which I didn't want her to have to do, and which she didn't want to do either, as it would mean being isolated from her family pretty much, which I would feel completely terrible about. We talked for a while after and still had strong feelings, but her mom insisted that we stop talking and just let the feelings go. We kept in touch in secret for a while, and her mom continued to keep a death grip on her, telling her if she sealed the deal with a man before marriage again, she would literally be disowned. She had no problem with her other daughters sealing the deal out of wedlock either. I couldn't help but wonder, what the freak is wrong with this woman? Eventually, my ex told me. The reason why her mom was so anti-doctor and such was because she was diagnosed severely bipolar in the 80s and refused to believe it, and decided that all doctors are liars and that medication is the devil, and refused to get any of the treatment she desperately needed. Also clearly has some severe attachment issues. Glad I dodged the bullet of engaging with anything too long-term with this girl. Thoroughly believe her mom would have literally done away with me if I ever proposed.
What was the most shocking thing you heard the quiet kid say? In class, he asked the woman teacher if he could go to the toilet. She sternly replied, "You've got 2 minutes, Richard." And Richard says, 2 minutes? It takes me that long to unravel it. Teacher goes red and everyone loses it. We were having a bullcrap elective course and we ran out of stuff to do, so we wound up having story time. My friend walks up to the front and starts telling us about how once he got pretty badly injured. Basically, he was walking into his friend's house, slipped on some black ice, face planted on it, and his front teeth tore off most of his front lip and broke off. He ran into the house babbling and bleeding. He was like 11 and missing part of his face, so he wasn't 100% coherent at the time. And his friend's mom takes one look, runs into her bedroom, locks the door, and doesn't do anything until my friend's dad arrives and starts screaming at her. My friend says he still has no idea why the grown adult woman couldn't handle the situation any better, and we all start making guesses and bullcrap psychoanalysis. Cue the quiet kid raising his magnificent head and blessing us with enlightenment. Maybe she just needed to finger herself real quick. So this one kid, who barely ever said 2 words one day, asked the teacher for the time. It was at some after-school thing and there was no clock. The teacher says the classic, "Time for you to get a watch," which for some reason was funny to everyone else. The quiet kid doesn't laugh. He looks the teacher dead in the eyes, and once everyone quieted down, he says, "So are you gonna tell me the freaking time or what?" We were in like 7th grade. In class we were studying genetics and one guy was being a real jerk and the teacher couldn't get him to shut up. Then after discussing inbreeding in dogs, one quiet kid raises his hand and says, "So is this likely how Peter became so freaking stupid?" The jerk kid who constantly screwed with people was in line with the quiet kid and the quiet kid's friend. The quiet kid is a bit overweight, so when he gets up to the lunch lady and gets his chicken nuggets, the jerk says, "You don't want extra nuggets, big guy?" The quiet kid out of nowhere just starts ranting. "No, I'm all set, but what are you up to this weekend? You want to hang out, grab some food, maybe screw a bit? I like to be on top and you look like a bottom. What do you say, want to screw tonight?" The entire line is dead silent. The jerk starts getting all mad and acting like he's going to start a fight, and the quiet kid says, "Okay, fine, you can be top, baby." The jerk kid leaves to the entire line laughing their butts off at his expense. No idea if the quiet kid was gay or he just knew that even jokingly suggesting the jerk kid was a homosexual would upset him more than anything. But I do know he left the line with his delicious chicken nuggets and a huge smile on his face. Quiet guy I work with never said much until he came up to me and asked, "What happens when an Eskimo is pleasured?" Before I get the chance to respond, he throws a handful of ice at me and walks away. In junior high in the mid-'80s, the game Trivial Pursuit was all the rage. We played it in math class one day, and this kid, Gary, who never said anything at all, totally spanked everyone else by answering every single sports-related trivia question. He got a lot of attention for it, and I believe he walked a little taller after that day. I don't think I ever heard him say anything else, but I did see him sitting on the bleachers at a few sports events. The quiet kid from my grade stood up one day, grabbed a broom, stood on a chair, and began trying to swat bees that got inside. One bee landed on the window where a quiet kid proceeded to yell, "Die, bee! Die!" and then swatted and shattered the window. He screeched when it happened and then sat back down. Never heard him speak again. One of my students hardly said a word all year until a couple of weeks ago. I was trying to get a group of talkative ones under control and she had enough. She yells out, "Shut the heck up! I'm trying to work, you freaking jerks!" Awkward silence followed because I didn't know how to handle the normally studious and quiet one losing it. I was like this in middle school. Not exactly quiet, but I never really socialized except with people right beside me in the form of asking for a pencil. One day, the classroom jerk happened to be more jerky than I could stand for, and I stood up out of my seat and yelled at him and sat back down. The entire class fell silent, but he never got that jerky again. I was best friends with the quiet kid in middle school. It wasn't so much shocking as the stupidest thing I've heard him say. He got this 1,000-yard stare all of a sudden and just said, "I can't remember what color my dog is." My dad is very quiet, to the point that it makes most people uncomfortable, even me sometimes. One day we're at the park and a woman walks past us and my dad quickly says, "What if I punched that woman in the face and said, 'Sorry, I thought you were my wife'?" In high school, there was this really quiet girl named Grace. She was a pleasant person, but wouldn't say anything more than hi or sorry unless you asked her something. Even then, she'd appear terrified. It was at prom, and I was in the parking lot of the venue we had prom at. I lost a contact and had to run to my car to grab my glasses. In the parking lot, Grace was smiling and walking from her car. She looked at me, laughed, and said, "My prom date just pleasured the heck out of me." I still laugh about it to this day. He started to attack someone in my class with a table when the teacher got a cup of coffee. That was quite something. Wait, he attacked another guy with a table? That's like a whole new level of angry right there. I was in marching band in high school, probably 7 years ago now, and we had this huge muscular guy as our brass instructor. He would always yell at us to nail these chords or, "You're not playing loud enough." There was this little Asian trumpet kid that was so innocent and nice, he hardly ever spoke a word. One really hot afternoon, our instructor was being especially loud and said, "Why don't the trumpets blow hard enough?" Dead silence across the field as all the brass are waiting for next instructions. Then we hear, "What doesn't your mom blow me hard enough?" from quiet trumpet kid. Needless to say, we all laughed, got push-ups, and laughed some more. Wow, literally this question came at a perfect time. I was just thinking about this, and it was by far in sophomore year of high school. This kid was so odd that honestly no one ever really noticed him, but one day he's sitting across from me at a table and he sees this one girl in really tight shorts and goes, "Man, I could have my head up her butt for months." It was pretty shocking. 72 virgins is nowhere near enough virgins for eternity. That's like a week's worth of virgins. I went to middle school and high school with this boy named Daniel. Never once heard him say a word. A friend of mine said he would whisper sometimes. The night of our senior party, we heard some music coming over from the corner where the karaoke machine was set up. At first, no one really noticed him because people had been singing on it all night, and most people stopped paying attention. But this was different because no one was singing and the music was playing. The DJ stopped the music and started the song again. Daniel was standing there looking frightened. But this time around, when the song started, he began to sing. Everyone in the room stopped what they were doing and just crowded around him. He wasn't a great singer by any means, but 99% of the people in the room hadn't ever heard him talk. When the song was over, everyone started clapping and cheering, and he walked away with a big smile on his face. I actually really like that story. No matter what you do, there are always people who will support you. In kindergarten, there was this kid, Donatel, and he never said a word. He was nice enough, played games and everything, but completely silent. One day we were looking out the classroom window as a cop drove by. Donatel opens his mouth and says, "Police car." At the time, we were all excited to hear him speak, but looking back, that kid must have had some real dark history. In high school, I had first level Spanish with this kid who was super quiet. At the end of the year, we all had to give a speech in Spanish in front of the entire class. This dude stood up and gave a speech, not in Spanish, but in a language that he had spent the entire year inventing. Playing rugby, hooker fails completely at line out. Someone shouts jokingly, "Does anyone know any good hookers to replace Patrick?" Quietest guy on the team. Never hear him say anything. Maybe Patrick's mum can help. Proceed to fall on floor. So this isn't so much what he said. The seniors played locker pinball with the underclassmen. It's exactly what it sounds like. They bounced one little guy constantly. Made him late for class a lot because they keep him bouncing so long. Well, one day, they were bouncing him and he super politely said, "Please stop, you're hurting me." Obviously, the seniors bounced him harder. Apparently, that was this kid's breaking point because he leapt onto the nearest senior, who just happened to be our star basketball forward. The little freshman bit into the senior's neck and literally tore a mouthful of skin off. He just stood there with this piece of bloody skin on his shirt, growling at everyone. Needless to say, no one ever screwed with Mad Dog Mike after that. Jeremy. This guy was so silent that we believed he was a mute. The school had just recently painted the bins in all kind of weird styles. As our group was walking somewhere at lunchtime, we passed a bin that was covered in handprints. He offhandedly goes, "That bin is handy," leaving us dumbfounded at his pun bomb. We sat in the classroom, I think in 5th grade. My friend had done a PowerPoint presentation about Eminem. He talked about that he lived in a trailer as a young boy, and the quiet straight-A student stands up and says, "Just like you," and asks to use the toilet. No one understood anything of what just happened. We live in North Europe. It's practically no one that lives in a trailer here. My friend didn't. If anything, I think that student was just looking for an excuse to be out of pocket. This one is pretty serious, so just a fair warning. Nothing. Let me explain. I took a class with Sung Hui Cho, the Virginia Tech shooter, one semester before the shooting. The class was called Contemporary Horror. It was a one-time elective offered by my favorite professor. We read horror novels and watched horror films, and discussed the craft of creating scary stories, but also how they reflected or represented their era's fears. It was a great class. There were only about 15 students, and it was discussion-heavy. Cho was one of them. I honestly never noticed him, even in that small class, until halfway into the semester. He wasn't quiet, he was silent. So on the day we all finally noticed him, our professor asked him something directly, and Cho just stared at him. I can't remember the question, but the nature of it meant silence was potentially an acceptable and funny response, so we all laughed. Except Cho. He just kept staring at our professor. Our laughter awkwardly died, and after a few moments of uncomfortable silence, our professor just said, "Okay," and moved on. It was so strange, but I forgot about that weird moment until after his rampage. That professor later told me that Cho's papers had been disturbing, but the nature of our course meant the envelope was being pushed a bit, and it had never been bad enough to suggest he'd do what he did. That professor was a good man, and he admitted he struggled with not blaming himself on some level for 1, not identifying how severe Cho's mental health problems were, and 2, for the graphic and terrible nature of some of what we watched in that class, which may have inspired Cho. He knew that it was bullcrap, but a part of him couldn't help but feel some blame. It was terribly sad. Hopefully this next story will lighten some things up. There was this one quiet girl in my class, and she would never say anything. This was around 3rd or 4th grade, but I would always try and get her to talk. I would be nice, like when she had no paper in her binder, I'd take notice and give her some before she can ask. When she was searching for a pencil in her bag, I gave her an extra one I had. It was like small little acts, picking up her pencil when she dropped it, etc. Then at lunch, this kid was picking on me. I was short, weak, and very emotional back then. She came out of nowhere and told the guy, "I'll give you 3 seconds to walk away." I was stunned because those were the first words I've ever heard her say. The guy slapped me, and she did a straight kick to his balls after that. I was honored and shocked she ever said anything. She never said anything after that, but I did say thanks. Texted friend that I did get to keep in touch with from work back then. She said that Quiet Girl moved shortly after I did. She did have Quiet Girl's number, I called it, and it came up with "this landline has been disconnected." Now I'm struggling even more. I need to find this girl. The girl I texted, though, didn't even know her last name. No one really did, I guess. What high school she goes to is still unknown. Where she lives, still unknown. All is not lost, though. I'm still waiting on a Facebook Messenger reply to see if another girl knows her last name. I did try just typing in her first name on Facebook, and I probably typed Elena's name 100 different ways and found nothing. She's not able to be publicly searched on Facebook. Neither am I, but geez, it sucks. I have one last hope. If you can all cross your fingers with me, it might just work. I learned that I won't be able to talk to her. Through a list of people I got her mom's number, her mom apparently remembered me by name, and then she said that she is, in circumstances caused by family, not letting her talk to anyone or go anywhere for a while. I never was able to find out why, but, it sucks. I'll update if I ever talk to her. If I ever see her, I'll take a photo with her. Tomorrow, I'm going to try to talk to her mom again to find out what happened. Thanks for the help, Reddit. If I ever marry her, I will share anything but her body and love with you. Thanks again, Reddit, for all y'all who have cared about my little story. As someone pointed out, it's been 5 months, and I want to add very little has changed. She and I still aren't exactly allowed to talk. I've talked to her mom a couple of times. I've talked to her once, and it's been better than the silence between the years. I've learned things like her current height and seen a picture of her, one she took when we got to chat once. But it doesn't look like there's much to work with in talking to her. Her mother was deemed unfit to parent or something like that in court against her dad's parents. I haven't asked about her dad, but I assume he's dead or ran off. I changed some of the things in this edit to avoid having too much info about her there, but I know I won't be able to take any of it down from the internet for good. So far, it looks like the only chance I'll get to talk to her again is when she turns 18 in a year and a half. Everyone, send your energy to that guy. We gotta get those two together. It's meant to be. One thing I always say, as a quiet guy, is whenever people are talking about me within earshot, they usually say something like, "That guy, he just never talks." Then I say, "No, but I hear everything." They all just kind of laugh awkwardly and slither away. I think it's weird how my lack of conversation is such a huge conversation starter. Our quiet kid was Tommy. Tommy never said anything ever. Out of all of the lunches we ate at our table senior year, I think Tommy was the only one who never told a story or even added anything to the conversation. He just always sat in the same spot along the wall, eating his lunch and laughing occasionally at our jokes. One day, we were sitting in the cafeteria eating lunch and sharing stories like we always do. My friend Raymond had spent the previous night with a girl named Haley. She was 2 years younger, but already had a reputation of hooking up with a lot of different guys. So he was telling us everything that went down, kind of bragging, even though nobody was really impressed as we were aware of Haley's reputation. Anyways, Raymond gets done telling his story, then proceeds to pull out a sandwich. I think it was some sort of fish. It didn't look very appealing to Raymond or us, so he says, "This looks disgusting, but I'll give it a try anyways," and proceeds to take a bite. In pipes Tommy, "Is that what you said about Haley last night?" Everyone explodes into laughter, drawing the attention to the entire cafeteria. Raymond is just sitting there mid-bite, stunned. I'm bent over in pain from laughing. Others are on the floor. One guy ran to the bathroom because he thought he was going to puke from laughing. Even Ray had to laugh. I never noticed him laugh, but Tommy had this sly grin on his face the rest of the lunch hour. I was, and still am, a geek, and I got bullied a lot in school. The Columbine massacre happened when I was in 8th grade, and all of a sudden, everyone started thinking a bit more carefully about the ramifications of spending years physically and psychologically torturing kids who were too small or afraid to fight back. I didn't make the connection at the time. The bullying kind of fizzled out for me in high school, and I just thought it was because everyone was getting more mature and empathetic and growing less cliquey, and I was delighted that some of the popular people were suddenly being so generous and friendly with me. It wasn't until one of these people asked me if I'd kill her if I brought a gun to school and shot everyone, I realized that a lot of the recent kindness the popular kids were suddenly displaying towards me was not necessarily coming from a genuine place. I was deeply insulted that anyone ever thought I would do anything like that, and deeply hurt that the other kids didn't actually like me. They were just afraid of me, and were being nice to me out of fear. A lot of the other established nerdy kids were in the same boat as me, including this one kid, Pat. I didn't know him very well, but he was frail, pale, bespectacled, highly intelligent, and quiet as a church mouse, so he was already on my radar as a potential ally. We were in an SAT prep course together, and I started sitting next to him. He didn't say much of anything to me or anyone for a few weeks. Then, One day as we were all settling in and waiting for the teacher, one of the popular girls who was particularly bubbly and not particularly gifted with intelligence said, "Pat, I used to think you were going to come to school and shoot everyone, but now I know I was wrong." Pat looked down towards his desk, stroked his chin thoughtfully and said, "We'll see." And the rest is history. Pat and I are still close friends to this day. Freshman, innocent, quiet girl on the spikes on top of German helmets from the war. "They look like painful butt plugs." We were chilling in a bar in Prague and someone rolled up some hash oil and tobacco and passed it around. The quiet kid hit it and got even quieter. 20 minutes later, some aggressive growling black metal comes on and out of nowhere he yells, "Kill your parents!" We absolutely lost it. He was pretty happy with himself. I'm the quiet kid. One day, before my economics class started, this guy turned around in his desk and asked me what I thought he'd be when he grew up. He never took anything seriously and joked around a lot, so I answered, definitely a porn star. The girl next to me started laughing really hard, and even when class started, she didn't stop. The teacher walked over to her and asked her what she was laughing about. When she finally calmed down to answer, she said, "He said that Daniel's gonna be a porn star," and the whole class heard it. Everybody, including my teacher, was staring at me with shocked looks on their faces. I turned bright red and couldn't find any valid excuse for what I'd said, and that's why I never talk. I'm not overly quiet, but I had a similar moment where I got ratted out by someone in class. A football player who sat next to me in English, who was not known for his intelligence, but had a good humor about it, got an A on a test. He was shocked and bemused, as were the rest of us. I said, "What, did you screw Mrs. Brown?" And everyone around us starts laughing. Mrs. Brown asks what's funny, in a non-hostile way, and I just pass it off as a dumb joke. But then Stephanie, the tattling quim in front of me, tells her exactly what I said. So then I'm out in the hall with my 50-something English teacher who was asking why I, who was such a nice boy who would say something like that, freaking suck-ups. I wasn't there, but in my announcing techniques class, teaches you how to present yourself and speak for radio and television. We were filming how-to videos in the studio, and the professor was telling us past examples of good and bad projects. One in particular was done by a very shy, awkward kid who came to the studio with a friend and a metal box. He so casually proceeds to pull a bunch of knives out of the box and film his video on the best ways to use the knives in combat, with very specific and effective ways to kill somebody using his friend as a dummy. He was very volatile with his movements, and his friend apparently didn't even bat an eye. The professor then explained that despite how uncomfortable it made him and the rest of the class, he had to give him an A because his presentation was actually put together pretty well. Quiet kid sneezes. Boy behind her, "God bless you." Her, "God isn't real." An annoying friend, "Dylan, you're so freaking stupid sometimes." Dylan, "At least I don't suck massive eggplant all the time." Someone once turned to me and said, "Dude, you're always so quiet, like a serial killer or something." I immediately responded, "Thank you." Looks of shock and horror as I realized what I said. In college, our fraternity had a pledge who was clearly awkward with girls, but was otherwise a real cool guy. Normally, Dan was super proper and a bit shy when talking to girls, but not this night. On this night, when Dan was asked about what kind of girl he wanted to date, he told our sweetheart, "The kind of girl who loves to be crushed." I'm not sure if Dan ever crushed, but that line became a staple in our frat for a while. I will never forget this as long as I live. It was like perfect cinema in real life. This quiet, weird girl in 10th or 11th grade always wore this giant coat and looked messy. She was a bigger girl and had a sister who was super pretty and skinny and popular. As I type this out, I realize it sounds fake or like a movie. Anyway, this big, awkward, quiet, friendless girl shows up at a talent show at the school. People weren't being obviously mean, but there was definitely an air of what the heck when she came out on stage in her big, messy coat and disheveled clothes. She sat on the piano and started to play and sing and just... my God, it was surreal. She sang this haunting bluesy song no one had ever heard before, and the auditorium just went dead silent. I distinctly remember tearing up, and I'm tearing up 20 years later now just remembering it. Who the heck knew? In middle school, the quiet kid Steven had an arch rival, Robbie. In class, Robbie always seemed to come out on top of their little scuffles, mostly because Steven couldn't really formulate or execute a burn or a comeback. He just rolled over and let Robbie get his insults in until the teacher stepped in. One day, I was walking behind Robbie after that class, and Steven Lee quietly crept up behind him. Before Robbie could even turn around, he got as close as possible and said, "If I was to come into your house and kill you while you were sleeping, I doubt anyone would even notice." Then he disappeared into the darkness of the science hallway. I don't remember the exact words, but that was pretty darn close. I was about 55% shocked, 30% laughing hysterically on the inside, and 15% terrified. Robbie never made fun of old Stevie again. I caught him looking at not safe for work My Little Pony pictures on his phone. That was awkward. I was a substitute teacher for a year after college. There was a 7th grade girl that all the other girls adored. At the age of 13, she was already a fake tan cheerleader and thought the world of herself and cared little for her classmates. One day in study hall, she was lying, to her friends about her string of boyfriends. The other girls were hanging on to every word she said. We'll call her Cordelia. Now, to set the necessary geography of this scene, there was a very quiet boy at the computer in the back of the classroom. He hadn't said a word all period. Anyway, I just want to date a boy that's dumber than me. That way, he'd do whatever I want because all he wants is, you knows. Cordelia, if you were dating anyone dumber than you would be pushing him around in a wheelchair and wiping drool off his face. Immediately, Cordelia looked at me, dumbfounded. She expected me to yell at him or send him to the office. No matter how hard I tried, I could not stop laughing. It was the most hysterical thing I'd heard all year. My friend told me about how they were watching Little Shop of Horrors in their theater class. There was this one kid who nearly never said anything, but apparently during one of the scenes with tentacles or vines or something, I've never actually seen it myself, out of nowhere this kid says to the class, "Well, I've seen enough hentai to know where this is going." Parents of Reddit, how did your son or daughter's significant other win you over? There are enough threads about how you ended up hating your son's girlfriend or daughter's boyfriend, but what have they done to gain your support? When I was in 10th grade, a guy I liked came over. My dad heard him playing guitar, and apparently that's all it takes for my dad to fall in love. That was the only time we hung out. I'm 31. He still asks about that guy. I was supposed to be one of those good Asian daughters that didn't date until I finished college. I got rebellious in sophomore year and decided to keep dating the guy who took me to winter formal. Mom actually liked him. Dad refused to acknowledge him. One day, my dad mentioned he got a new car stereo and he was going to take it to Best Buy to have it installed. Boyfriend said, "Nope, let me handle it," and spent an entire Saturday afternoon installing the radio and cleaning up the wires in his dash. Dad loved him afterwards, basically treated him like his own son. Parents didn't even bat an eye afterwards when we started living in sin a couple of years later, but by that time he was an engineer, we were engaged, and I couldn't give a rat's behind. I had been casually seeing a guy for a couple of weeks when one night we were out to dinner and I was having a particularly homesick night. I live 15 hours from my family, and at this point I hadn't seen him in over 8 months. He joked and said that we should drive home and surprise my mom for Mother's Day that weekend. The next day, we were in the car driving. I've never seen my parents so surprised. Also a little worried. I think their initial thoughts were that something had gone terribly wrong and I was there to deliver the news. My parents have loved him ever since. Won my significant other's dad over by shaving him. We had a not too close relationship, always quite distant. After he suffered a stroke and was hospitalized, he couldn't move too well, and as he did not want to be washed and shaved by the nurses, and my significant other was not able to do this, it was my duty. Even though we couldn't really talk, I knew I got his approval. He said, "Take good care of her," and he died a few days later. On the bright side, this person has posted an update and says, "Yes, I'm still together with the girl, real family with 2 kids now." Not quite what was asked, but I knew I was there with my significant other's folks when her dad stopped giving me room temperature beers from the pantry and started giving me cold beers from the fridge. Upon meeting my teenage daughter's significant other, she was always embarrassed by me at that time, so she says, "Dad, are you drunk?" It's the middle of the day, and of course I wasn't drunk. I hesitate for a moment and then just answer, "Yes." Her new significant other looks at me completely straight-faced and says, "Same." Sense of humor wins me over. I won my boyfriend's, now husband's, parents over by throwing a party. It was his birthday and I had gotten a good number of people to show up for a surprise party. He was on the phone with his parents when he walked in and everyone yelled, "Surprise!" He got all teary-eyed and told his parents, "I have to go. It's a surprise party. I didn't know I had so many friends." For good measure, I sent them photos of the party as well. His mom particularly liked the set of photos that showed my SO and friends battling a bomb-shaped grill that apparently caught on fire and exploded. Apparently, making my SO smile. It seems that it was pretty rare enough for her mother to actually be surprised to see her smile. And now my top comment is about my wife. I'm the significant other of the daughter in this story. My girlfriend's dad basically hated me until the time we drove together down to Monterey from Austin and had to make conversation for 7 hours and pretend it wasn't awkward. He's an engineer, so I went with that and casually mentioned my desire to get a small CNC lathe for metal fabrication, or possibly build a basic XY controller to attach to a traditional lathe. Turns out his final project for graduation at college was to build a CNC lathe. We nerded out and started discussing the pros and cons of stepper motors versus servos, then the conversation moved to Arduinos, and the rest is history. Now we get along handsomely, and it makes my girlfriend very uncomfortable. My good friend got dumped by his girlfriend halfway through college after she cheated on him. Her dad called and said, "My daughter is a freaking moron. You know there's always so-and-so, her 1 year younger sister." Pecan pie. Yes, fixing computers helped. Yes, him being a nice guy helped. But I swear my husband won over my entire family and extended family on his pie alone. Quote from every family meal ever before we got married. Is your boyfriend coming? Is he bringing that pecan pie? Now that we are married, hey, where's this pecan pie? You know you married a winner there. He makes great pies. My significant other bonded with my dad immediately by their mutual hatred of my older sister's ex-boyfriend, baby daddy. Actually, my younger sister also had a trash can of a BF at the time. So when my significant other showed up with a car, a stable job, and actually treated me with respect, it was like a miracle. I'll tell you the story of how my husband won over my dad. My dad has a sailboat, which he's kind of crazy about. My husband has a background in naval architecture. We went to visit my dad, and while we were on his boat in the marina, the guy in the slip next to us runs over. "My boat is taking on water! Come help me bail it out!" "Don't worry," responds my father. "My son-in-law is a naval architect." Something to note at this point in the story, my now husband and I had only been dating for like 8 months. We weren't even close to getting engaged, let alone married. But now all of a sudden, boyfriend is a son-in-law. So now husband just goes with it. Sure, I, the son-in-law, will see if I can help. He gets on the guy's boat and sees that there's water seeping through the floorboards. He thinks this is weird given that the pump is going and the boat isn't listing or anything. So he gets down, sticks his finger in the water, and licks it. It's fresh water, now husband says. Your bilge is leaking. Did you remember to turn the hose off after you finished filling up your freshwater tank? And that, my friends, is how my husband became a legend at Dad's Marina and my dad's favorite person of all time. Edit, because, despite being with my husband for almost 10 years now, I still know nothing about naval architecture. I know the exact moment I won my wife's family over. I could see it in her father's eyes. It was high school, before we started dating. The first time I went over to her house, actually. Her father and 2 brothers were all pretty tall, and I'm average height. It's a very alpha male household, and they have this thing they like to do to potential boyfriends. So when my wife left the room to go to the bathroom or whatever, all 3 of them stood, lined up shoulder to shoulder, and loomed over me, blank-faced, glaring down, no words, no motion, just staring and looming. I found out later that her last boyfriend almost cried when they did this to him. I've always been really socially awkward, but an odd part of that awkwardness is that I'm never intimidated by people. I don't know why, but they just don't frighten me. I slowly stood up, looking them all in the eye, and then poked her dad right in the tummy. I said, "Boop!" He stared for a second, and then a giant grin split his face. It turns out that he's a massive goofball. From that moment on, I was a member of the family. The whole dating and marriage thing was just a formality to them. My ex's father did something similar. I met the entire family except the father, who was working offshore. Then he came home one week and we were spending at her parents' place. We'd been there a while, had dinner, and I was talking to my ex's brother. Suddenly, everyone goes quiet and he's home now. All right, I thought, time to man the heck up. He enters, gives his wife and son some love, then his daughter, my ex, before he turns on to me. He stares me up and down and I say, "Hello, sir, nice to finally meet you," and extend my hand for a handshake. He takes it and grips it a bit harder than normal firm shakes. I squeeze just as much back, and that was that. Afterwards, my ex and her mother tells me how they've seen him do that to other guys my ex had brought home, and how they saw him deflate while looking me up and down. Mostly up, I'm 6'7", and that the handshake sealed the deal. I wasn't completely convinced, but later that year at Christmas, after dinner on Christmas Day, he came with beers and cognac, poured one for everyone and put the bottle on the table, saying something like, "Just pour yourself another when you want." Now, I'm more of a whiskey guy, but cognac is good too, and I was getting a bit of a buzz, so I took him up on it. As soon as he sees me reach for the bottle, he goes, "That's a good lad. How about you, son?" to his son. And the son/brother-in-law goes, "Nah, I'm good with the strong stuff for now," which launches the father into a joking tirade on how his son-in-law is a better drinker than his own son. That's when I knew. My ex later told me, we split on good terms, that her father had almost went ballistic when she told him we split up. I'm a martial arts instructor, among other things. I caught my daughter's boyfriend looking at my belt rack, 5th degree black belt, and trophies from when I was much younger. And he said, "Are all those yours?" "Yup." "So you know how to throw someone?" "Yup." "Could you teach me?" How much of a setup did I need? I took him into the backyard and threw his skinny butt around for about 45 minutes. And every time he hit the ground, he got back up with a huge smile and said, "That was awesome, show me how." So I took him to class with my daughter and had her practice throws on him. He never complained, never flinched, and never whined. After class, I told my daughter I liked him. So she broke up with him. So close. My wife won my parents over easily. Preface, had an old Rottweiler named Max that was young at heart but clearly showing his age. My previous girlfriends never petted him or gave him attention. He didn't crave it, but he wanted to be acknowledged. Fast forward a few years, and I bring my girlfriend, now wife, home for Christmas break. I introduced her to Max, and she immediately sat on the floor and rubbed him, petted him, and just gave him love that no other girlfriend gave him. I hadn't seen his little nub wag so quickly in a long time. He ended up falling asleep with his head in her lap. Max is no longer with us, but at least I got his approval before he passed. I will never forget that day. I'm tearing up just thinking about it. I am so happy to be reading this story because I love dogs. I love the thought of just petting on dogs and being their friend, and just having a dog's approval in the family is one of the most heartwarming experiences of all time. I have a huge smile on my face right now just reading that story. It was my parents, actually. When my mom first met my dad, he was working in an auto body repair shop, actually really good at what he does. Well, to surprise my mom's dad, he borrowed my grandfather's 1968 SS Camaro, which had been nearly totaled in a car wreck a few years back, and completely repaired it. When they first met, my dad shook my grandfather's hand, said, "Mr. Haynes, my name is Kevin. Why don't you come outside?" His Camaro was sitting outside looking almost brand new. My mom says that was the only time she has ever seen her dad cry. My fiance went over my parents individually, but nothing beats my stepdad. My stepdad loves fun facts, and they're always fairly obscure, and I can never answer them, but that only makes it more fun for him. So the three of us, fiance, stepdad, and I, are sitting around watching The Simpsons, and my stepdad goes, "Who's that band?" when Spanish Flea comes on. My fiance immediately answers with, "Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass." My stepdad was dumbfounded, and I'm pretty sure that's when our relationship got a seal of approval. My wife's dad told me I'm the only boyfriend he ever liked. He said my strategy of whenever I would call to talk to her and he answered the phone, instead of just saying, "Is my wife there?" or "Can I talk to my wife?" I would always say, "Hi, Mr. her dad, how are you?" and make brief small talk before asking for her. It wasn't a strategy, it's just how I was raised and/or Southern politeness, but it worked. As a Southerner myself, that's common courtesy. I worked in an ice cream shop with my current significant other, and her mom came in one night. Without knowing it was her mom at the time, me being friendly, I struck up a conversation with her while I got her ice cream and food for her. 3 months later, I started dating the girl I worked with, and I immediately recognized her mom when I met her for the quote-unquote first time. The first thing her mom said was, "Well, you already have my approval." I won over my now wife's parents by being able to socialize with them even though we didn't share a common language. We ended up doing some sort of pseudo-charades in order to get things ready for her birthday celebrations. Then I ate some particularly spicy food, which was apparently made just for me. When I ate it and didn't keel over on fire, they thought I was brave enough for their daughter. When I expressed how delicious it was and picked up 3 more, they knew I was part of the family. Apparently fixing all of her family's computer and other technology-related problems doesn't help. In college, I was sleeping with my then-boyfriend in his bed, with his roommate also sleeping in the same room 4 feet away, and I wet the bed for the first time since I was out of diapers. I woke up early, and after realizing what happened, tried to sneak out of bed. He woke up to find me humiliated, shaking, and then bursting into tears. He assured me everything was okay, he knew it was an accident, he was still very attracted to me, and let me shower first. When I told my mom how he handled it, she was sold. Now I have to convince her my current boyfriend is just as great. Not a parent, but I'll talk about how my white as Wonder Bread significant other found some common ground with my Middle Eastern parents. Eating meals together is a really important part of my culture. My current SO was willing to try anything and everything my mom put in front of him. My SO came from a household where his mother only ever cooked meat and potato types of meals, and they never ate out at restaurants, so he had a beginner's palate. Still, he tried everything from picked vegetables to rice with weird stuff in it, and even stews that looked like liquid poop. My mom is a sucker for anyone who will eat her food, so she started to like him a bit more after having him over for dinner. This story is about the little things. My now husband won over my mom forever when, after meeting for the first time at a college cocktail party, my parents were visiting for Parents' Weekend, he put his jacket over my shoulders when we all went outside. It was a brisk fall day and I was in a dress. She has always said she liked him from that moment on. 33 years later, she wasn't wrong. My boyfriend won my dad over by taking me to several different doctor's offices when I was having medical issues about a month after we started dating. He also stayed calm enough to speak with my parents on the phone and tell them what was going on while I was freaking myself out too much to talk. My dad has always said he likes him well enough with previous boyfriends, but has told me several times he likes my current boyfriend a lot and thinks he's a good guy. My grandmother has never liked any of my boyfriends. She has always told me flat out that she didn't really like them, which hurt me immensely but wasn't really out of character. Pretty much nothing I pursued or achieved was good enough for her. I resigned myself to the fact that she would never like anyone I brought home. She never really warmed up to my mother, even though my mom is an amazing human being. No one was good enough for my dad in her mind. Then one day, she surprised me. After meeting my SO for the first time, she told me, "Well, I didn't expect to like him, but I did. He looks at you when you speak, listens to what you say, and responds in a way that shows genuine interest." That was it. That's all a guy had to do in order to impress my grandmother. I'm slightly horrified that she didn't see those qualities in any of the other men I brought home. That happened 6 years ago, and my SO and I are married now, expecting our first child. According to my girlfriend, I won over her mother when I helped her grandfather get up and down after a surgery and offering to stop by and help him out for a few weeks. I just thought I was being polite. As a brother with a sister who has had a pretty awful selection of boyfriends, there has only been one who has impressed me. He didn't make some huge gesture or do me favors or try to win me over. He cared about her and stuck around. It took a while, but that's the only way he was ever going to get any trust or admiration. My now husband, David, and I met online and were in a long-distance relationship while I was in college near Duluth, Minnesota. We had never met in person before, and I invited him to come see me. I told my mom about the meeting, and she was really paranoid. Call me every day so I know you're alive type of thing. He came and we really hit it off and we were having a lot of fun. After day 2, Mom was convinced that he at least wasn't an axe murderer, and after a couple of more days, I decided that I was into him enough that he should meet my parents. I know, poor guy, but this was a good thing in the long run. So I invited them up on that Saturday. They picked us up and we all went out to lunch and made some polite conversation, and we decided we should take a small trip to Split Rock Lighthouse, a famous lighthouse on Lake Superior about an hour from Duluth. I remember that I left my camera in my dorm, so we swung by so I could pick it up. I left David in the car with my folks, alone for just a few minutes. While I was gone, my dad joked, "Quick, let's drive off," to which David, who has a very sarcastic dry wit, responded, "I knew that one way or another this trip would end with me dead in the woods." There was a shocked pause and then my parents started cracking up. When I returned, it was clear the ice had broken and they relayed what had been said to me. My mom was like, "I think he'll fit right in." She often related the story, characterizing it as the moment she decided that David was right for me. Luckily, I agree. I am a white American man married to a Japanese woman. Here's the story of how I won over her dad, then got him to hate me, then won him back. While we were dating, I was living and working in Japan, and I won over her dad because I could tell puns in Japanese, his favorite style of humor, and because we shared common interest in films and music. We also just got along well in general. However, he was very old-fashioned, and so my then-girlfriend opted to not ever tell him that we were officially dating, even though it was obvious. My company ended up transferring me to Canada, so my girlfriend and I decided to get married in a hurry so she could go with me. When we announced this to her dad, his eyes instantly turned red as he realized his daughter was leaving the house and the country. Tearfully, he asked me what my plans were for my career, how I would take care of her, etc. Somehow, none of my answers seemed to please him, and the night ended with me feeling like I had screwed up pretty bad. He didn't speak to me for more than 3 weeks, and I knew he resented me for taking his daughter. Then my parents and 3 of my siblings came to Japan to be there when we signed the legal marriage documents, even though we were planning to have a real wedding 1 year later. Both families got together for a fancy, and my family saved my butt. They brought gifts for my future in-laws, told stories, jokes, and treated them like royalty. My future in-laws loved my family, and by the end of the week, I was newly married and my new wife's father treated me like a son of his own. We have gotten along famously ever since, and I credit that all to my amazing parents, brothers, and sisters. Funny end note, we had a real wedding 1 year later at my home in Chicago. My wife's father's speech ended up being the highlight of the night. It went something like this, paraphrasing. 150 years ago, Admiral Perry of the U.S. Navy came to Japan, pointed his ship's cannons at Tokyo, and demanded that Japan open itself to the West for trade. In much the same way, James came into our lives and pointed his cannons at my family. But just as the U.S. and Japan came to be close allies and friends, so too has James grown to be a close friend and member of our family. Everyone told me it was the best part of the wedding. My parents are pretty traditional and really like the idea of any potential boyfriends asking my dad's permission to date me. However, after 3 years of undergrad, living away from home, and inevitable casual boyfriends, they had kind of come to accept that this was not going to happen. I made this joke after a one-night stand made it clear he wanted to date me. We went on a few dates and things were progressing well. However, I was surprised one day to hear that my father and brother were coming to visit the city for a day. Turns out this guy had contacted my brother on Facebook and was taking him and my father out to lunch to ask permission to date me. This one-night stand is now my husband. My son's girlfriend won us over by helping us bring him back to dressing like a human being. Despite being an olive-skinned, thanks to my distant Italian relatives and my wife being Hispanic, middle-class boy from the suburbs, he dressed like a hardcore rapper. He looked ridiculous, as besides everything else, he was almost 6 feet tall, so sagging pants and shorts would have to be elephant-sized to work. I'm not sure why he went through that phase, as even during it he was fairly well-mannered. There's a lot of other reasons, not least of them being that she is the daughter of a childhood friend of my wife, and thus for the same ungodly remote town she's from, current population 150-ish. I cajoled and demanded, and he didn't change. She batted her eyelashes, and he did. She won him and us. This is a story from my significant other's parents. It was first year of university, and it's still summery outside. Every night for the first week here was drinking and partying on the quad and in the dorms. Well, at the time, I had met my significant other once in the hallway, and that was it. Well, one night, she goes out and gets blasted because her previous boyfriend was always partying despite her protests. Well, she nearly died of alcohol poisoning that night. She was rushed off to the hospital for detox and such. I had no idea this happened. I only saw the ambulance pull up to my dorm building. The next morning around 5 a.m., she was knocking on my door still inebriated from the night before. I didn't understand anything she was saying because she just kept saying she woke up in a room, locked to a bed with needles in her arm. In a thick Slovakian accent, too. She failed to mention that she was at the hospital. So I let her in my dorm, sat her on my bed, made her a cup of Earl Grey, and put Tarzan on my telly and had her watch it. Then I slowly tracked down her phone, wallet, and keys she had lost all over campus the night before. Then I bought her a giant 2-liter bottle of water and food. I brought her to her room and gave her the food and then some Advil. She told her parents all this and they were very happy someone had helped her. Later that week, she started inviting me everywhere and we eventually became best friends and then even more than that. Well, Christmas break rolls around and she left before me to go skiing with her family. I was texting her asking where she and her family were skiing. They were at a mountain not far away. I asked her how happy she would be if I came the next day. She was thrilled but thought I was blowing hot air. To her surprise, I was at her lodge the next day after a 12-hour bus ride. She couldn't believe it and her parents were impressed that I went through all that trouble. I spent the next 3 days skiing and going to hot springs, and then I bussed back to the university to finish my last final. 3 years later, I am still with her, and her parents still highly approve of me for all the things I do for her. Not apparent, but how I won my in-laws over was pretty harrowing but funny. My wife and I knew each other for years, but having done the long-distance thing, I didn't meet her family until we eloped. I met the in-laws the day before the wedding. Due to the madness, though, I didn't get to know them until a short while later. Visiting them for the weekend, my wife's mom said that I could help myself to anything in the fridge. Me, my wife, and her brothers went out drinking, and when I came back, they urged me to take liberties with any leftovers, which I, of course, had no problem with. Stumbling upon a bag full of bacon, that was equivocal to manna from heaven. Unbeknownst to me, though, Mom-in-law had cooked it in preparation for one of her kids' graduation parties the next day. I had the misfortune of seeing her wake up, walk to the fridge, discover that I had eaten all of her bacon, and start bawling. She was so stressed about the party that this was the straw that broke the mother-in-law's back. It was my first real impression on her, and I done screwed up. The rest of the fam was really cool about it, and assured me she would get over it. I felt terrible about it, though. The next time I visited them, I didn't say anything about it. Still too fresh. But I wore a shirt I made that had big bold letters saying, "Sorry I ate your bacon." We've bonded over the trauma ever since. This story is an example of what good communication can do for a relationship. I don't know about when it happened for sure, but the moment I honestly felt accepted by my significant other's family was when we had just gotten back from our very first road trip together. We drove to Miami from Houston and stayed at SeaWorld Hotel next to Universal Studios. Anyways, I was having a beer and shooting pool with her dad and grandpa when suddenly her dad looks at me and says, "You know, you're the first boyfriend to make it through a vacation with my daughter and still be in love with her when you get back." I wasn't surprised after the trip I just had, but he was right. I still loved her and that had only grown through the past vacation. He asked what the worst part was, and I told him it was when my girlfriend, his daughter, had wanted to do something and I told her no, because it wasn't a good idea. The look of utter shock on his face was unexpected, and then her grandpa chimed in, same look of shock. "You told her no?" Then her dad goes, "And lived?" Then they started laughing, and instead of asking me to get the beer, her dad handed me one. I felt respected a bit, and at the least accepted as a man within her family. Clarification on girlfriend's behavior, the reason for shock was that she had never had a boyfriend that stood up to her. They were glad I wasn't a pushover. That's all. Her mother also commented to her, she told me about it after the fact, that I had the patience of a saint. Her actions on the trip, first off, let me explain a bit. My significant other is a very high-strung individual who has had traumatic events take place in her past. No, I won't go into any more detail. She has a script now for high anxiety, legitimately attained after blood work and has regular meetings with her physician. So, imagine being with a still relatively new boyfriend. We'd only known each other for about 6 months, away from home, and on a very busy freeway that passes through small towns in backwoods Alabama and Florida. Very stressful for anyone. But throw in the fact that she wasn't yet on medication for her imbalance, she was having a rough time of things. Metaphorical example of the problems we fought about until we both broke down and had a heart-to-heart at the end of the week, which is where we calmly sat and discussed what was really bothering us. We are standing in a field of yellow daisies. Sunny out. Good mild weather. When she would decide the daisies should have been tulips, and that it's my fault we didn't find the right field. Again, metaphor showing how pointless the fight was, and I did not help the situation at all. When dealing with things that bother me, especially if it's someone I care for, I will put up a wall of jerk. Seriously, I get mean when I'm frustrated. She's anxious over nothing and thus adds to the storm. Not pretty. We are now settled in quite well and have been together for 3 years, living in the same apartment for 1.5 years. Yes, sometimes we fight over silly things, but in the end we always find a solution to the problem and then put it into action. She's learned that when I do voice a no, it's because of a good reason and no longer questions it. In turn, I show respect and do the same. If it confuses one of us, we ask later when we're at home and calm. I love this woman, and I'm secretly working on a way to propose to her. That is all. I hope this guy marries her. I'll tell you the story of how my husband won over my dad. My dad was I was about to say, my dad was a sailboat.
What was your I'm in danger moment? So I was walking to my school, and there's this little street with 2 lanes that leads onto the highway that you need to pass to get to my school. I usually wait till everyone has passed since no one respects the yield, but that day, the guy in the right lane actually yielded, which was awesome. So I made my way across. Suddenly, as I passed through the right lane and entered the left lane, before my mind could process anything, my body just straight up stopped moving. I was briefly confused before I felt 2 cars barely graze both my front and backside. Apparently, the guy on the right started driving again as soon as I was out of his lane, and at the same time, a guy behind him was being impatient and jumped to the left lane without stopping for me. So they both passed me at the same time, while I survived by being frozen in the minor gap between the 2. Honestly, my subconscious is the only reason I'm alive today. Something very similar happened to me in high school. I was walking home from school down a very busy street. I was approaching an intersection, but I stopped a few feet from the edge and just froze behind the light pole. At that moment, a car runs a red light, hits the back of a car, and sends it spinning towards me. Car also clipped a motorcycle, sending it flying 40 feet in the air. The car ends up 1 foot away from the light pole. I'm behind, stopping in the area I'd usually wait to cross the street. If I hadn't just stopped, I'd be pretty badly hurt. I was in a bouncy castle at a college ball, and my friend turned the pump off as a prank. My head was sealed in the deflating plastic, and I was suffocating, kicking my legs wildly, trying to free myself. I had almost passed out when someone noticed and pulled me out. It would have been quite an monogamous end. Oh yeah, because that's a good prank. Wee! What does this do? Chicka, 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 psh. Roger, would you seriously turn off the pump to a bouncy castle with people inside? Of course not. Only when it's funny. Come on! It's only a prank. When I was about 14, I chucked a teen angst tantrum and went for an angry walk in the bushland behind my house. Didn't take my phone, didn't tell anyone where I was going, just stormed out. It started raining pretty heavily after about 45 minutes, so I turned back to head home. But a bridge I had crossed had been washed away and the creek was rising very rapidly. I stupidly skidded down the embankment to see if I could cross, but didn't realize the rain had made it too slippery for me to be able to climb back up. I vividly remember standing on that little patch of rock thinking, haha, I might die. I didn't. I climbed onto a rock ledge, waited out the storm, and managed to make my way back up the embankment and return by a different route. By that point, had been gone for about 4 hours and had escaped death only to be almost killed by my parents. My intoxicated friend knocked over another guy's pint by accident, and then his drunken brain decided he could take on the guy. The guy was built like a brick crap house, and his friends were all huge. They were the type of guys that didn't take too kindly to being challenged to a fight. We were 2 skinny 19-year-olds. Anyway, I bought Brick Crap House Guy a replacement drink and somehow talked him and his mates down from flattening the pair of us, then dragged my idiot friend out of the pub and got him home. Some people should moderate their drinking. By the way, the rule is you spill another man's pint, you immediately apologize and buy the next round. Actually, saw the guy again a few days later, small town, and he was cool about it. Private pilot story. Just on a return flight with a few mates back to Loco Aerodrome, I looked down at rudder pedals and noticed the side of my shoe was basically starting to melt. First moment of realization that the engine was indeed on fire. Ha! I'm in danger.
Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, we are coming up here on the beautiful sights of Washington. You can actually see the Space Needle if you take a look out to the left. Just don't look to the right because there's smoke coming from the engine and my foot is on fire. Please Please enjoy your stay, and thank you very much for flying with Western Airlines.
A retired cop my dad knows has a great story. I guess this was like the 70s or 80s. A pregnant woman spent the night at her mother's house while her husband was at a bachelor party. She comes home in the morning and sees the door is ajar, but she knows she locked it. She runs to the neighbors and calls the police. She calls the house where the guys were supposed to be, but no one answers because it's like 7 a.m. after a novel of hard drinking. My dad's friend and another officer shows up. They talk to the wife and decide to check the house out just in case. Since she was pregnant, she's going to wait at the neighbor's house. So they walk in and shout, "This is the police! If anyone is there, come out now!" Or something like that. Then they start checking rooms. Nothing in the living room, nothing in the hall. But then they get to the kitchen. There is broken glass on the floor and what they think must be blood. So they call for backup and they keep looking. Nothing in the other bedroom, nothing in the washroom, bathroom. Finally, they get to the master bedroom and see clothes on the bed. And they can hear someone in the master bathroom. "This is the police! Come out now!" they shout. And nothing. Finally, they decide to go in full force. They open the door and run in, weapons hot. They see a man completely in his birthday suit, blood all over himself and the bathroom, passed out on the floor. The medicine cabinet is open and everything that was in it was on the floor in the sink. The guy in the birthday suit wrapped his foot in a towel and there was blood coming from it. Though they couldn't get him to talk, as he was unconscious, they called in for an ambulance. A few minutes later, the backup guys and the ambulance arrives and they start treating the guy. Then my dad's friend goes to tell the pregnant woman about the intoxicated guy in his birthday suit that broke into her house. She was horrified. Because he was passed out and had lost the blood, the medics take him to the hospital. The pregnant woman and the neighbors are all looking out the window as they wheel the guy out, covered in a blanket, handcuffed to the stretcher. She just loses it, is laughing and crying, potentially hysterics from being pregnant. By this time, one of the other cops was inside and he starts trying to calm her down. He's afraid she is going to go into premature labor. Finally, the neighbor explained that the guy they had arrested was the pregnant lady's husband. It turned out his buddies dropped him off about half an hour before his wife got home. He stripped down for a shower, then decided to get some water, shattered a glass, then stepped on it, then wrapped his foot in the dish towel and crawled to the bathroom where he tried to disinfect it, but instead spilled everything, got blood everywhere, and passed out. That must have been a hell of a bachelor party. A couple of days ago, I was working up a tree, arborist. The tree in question was a black locust that was dying at the top. However, the base looked fine. I set about slowly dismantling the tree, which was an awkward task because I couldn't get as high up onto the tree as I wanted due to the decay, and it was growing over a building, so I couldn't just let the bits free fall. After an hour or so of working, I heard a snap about a meter above me while I was about 13 meters up into the crown. I looked up to see a long branch above me that was growing into the crown of another tree had snapped. I realized instantly that this meant that the base of the tree I was in had failed, and I was going to go down with it if I didn't get out. Before I could even react, the tree was free falling down towards the outbuilding that I had been working so hard to avoid. Time slowed down, and I could see my colleagues standing in the woodland watching me with pure fear on their faces. After that, it's hard to put thoughts into words, but I remember looking down at where the tree was going to land and thinking that it's weird because this second I am completely lucid, but a second from not I will be probably unconscious, possibly never to regain consciousness. Yet I didn't feel any panic, just a knowing that I'm in extreme danger. All I could do was grab the nearest branch and plant my feet on another one and hope to God that I didn't end up under any part of the tree. After what seemed like forever, the tree came down onto the roof of the outbuilding. I had probably traveled 10 meters vertically and about the same laterally. The large limbs of the tree that were previously to my right, but were now above me, didn't snap and crush me like I was sure they would. I managed to hold onto my branch and stayed roughly in the middle of the tree. I was free from injury, other than a twisted ankle and a twinge in my wrist from holding on tight as the tree smashed down. I don't know how I didn't get seriously screwed up by that tree, and I don't know why it failed on me, but I will never forget that knowing that I'm in danger, falling with tons of wood, and there was nothing I could do about it. My third year fighting forest fires, I was upgraded to pump truck operator for a mop-up crew. After a section of the fire was deemed extinguished, they send in mop-up to make sure it's actually really out. I drove a giant pickup truck with a huge tank of soapy water and filled up portable water bags for the mop-up fighters. On my way back to base, I had a bit of water left when I saw plumes of white smoke. You're urged to extinguish all smoke because no one wants a dead fire to come back to life. There's a fallen tree next to a bunch of bushes, and another half-fallen tree, and the half-fallen tree is spewing hot coals every couple seconds with a loud pop. Each pop of hot coals makes the other wood products take off. The fire was at risk of starting over again right here. I had nothing but a small ant bladder bag. I bounded down to the pump truck, grabbed a hose, ran it up, bounded down, turned the hose on, ran up, and began attacking the situation. As I'm chasing down the heat and fuel source, I realize I'm surrounded by flammable objects. Soon after, I'm surrounded by giant flames, alone. I was literally screaming and laughing as I hacked and sprayed away at the rising flames. I got it tamed down after soaking and chopping, killed the main source. I also sprayed the heck out of the branches so soapy water was dripping everywhere. I had just finished rolling the hose back up and was catching my breath when these Marines came running up the hill. They were sent to investigate the smoky mess I've been dealing with. Being high-fived by a Marine is a good feeling. I know you guys might hear this a lot in general, where people say like, hey, appreciate your firefighters, but seriously, appreciate the people doing this. Fighting fires is absolutely no joke. Incredibly grateful. It's something I know I personally could never do. When I was about 12, a friend from our local church drove me and his sons to go swimming at a creek near where we lived. I didn't know how to swim yet, but he assured me that I'd be fine since there wasn't much water and it could be a good learning experience. So far, pretty normal stuff. It gets weird though. The water was much deeper than expected and he did nothing to help on several occasions when I almost drowned. I was supposed to stay at his house overnight, but wasn't feeling very good after breathing in water a few times. Plus, something obviously didn't feel right. He was mumbling to himself while he put his shoes back on after swimming. Good thing I stayed home. Turns out he was off his medication. My family didn't know that he had previously terminated a person during a hunting trip when he was in his early teens. The night I decided to go home, he went off the rails. He believed that the world was going to end, so he tried to terminate his whole family. When my family went to church that Sunday, we didn't see his family. The pastor told us what happened. They had all miraculously survived, but he was now in lockup for his serious issues. Almost drowned, almost taken out. Family friend was a murderer, and we didn't know it. Going home from a party in a shared Uber with some friends, I mistook the street for another one and ended up further away from my apartment than I thought. I put the GPS on, and of course it makes you take some back alley. At one, I saw some movement near a car, and there was a guy looking at me. I pass him, try to call my friend because he was looking weird. By the way, I did the wrong number and someone got a voicemail from me sounding totally terrified and spitting nonsense. I walk faster and look back. He is ducking behind another car and clearly switched from his original place, and he had a small knife in his hand. I bolted from there and ran as fast as possible with adrenaline and stopped after finding a busy street. But when I saw the knife, I definitely went, oh crap. I was on holiday and had left my hotel to walk to Livingstone National Park in Zimbabwe. My friends had visited earlier in the day and wanted to stay by the pool, so I figured I'd walk over by myself, since it wasn't a particularly long trip. The easiest route for my hotel was following a small path between some bushes and trees. I'd been down the path before, but this time, there were families of baboons walking down this path and no other person. I walked on anyway, figuring that as long as I wasn't waving food around or getting too close, I'd be fine. Apparently, I must have done the latter and unintentionally stepped too close to one of their young, because one of the full-grown adult baboons jumped out in front of me and started howling at me, baring its teeth. Because of the noise it was making, it attracted the attention of all the other baboons, and 2 other full-grown adults soon joined the first in howling and showing serious aggression, all of a couple of yards in front of me and to my side. I had no idea if there were more behind me, but my instinct in the situation was to hold up my hands to show empty palms, stand tall, broad, and start stepping backwards and away slowly. Thankfully, it worked, and they eventually turned away and carried on, but for a short while, my mind was having flashes of being torn apart by 3 baboons. I later found out their bites can break human bones, so I'm pretty lucky that my instinct in the situation was the correct one. I arrived for work at a bank, stepped inside, and had a stranger say, "Happy April Fools," and put a revolver against my temple. 2 robbers, both with revolvers and rifles, had made their way inside before opening, and had bailed up the manager as he arrived and then the staff as they arrived. They were talking to a third accomplice on walkie-talkies. I was told to lie face down on the ground, arms on my back and legs together. One robber was going down the line, hog-tying staff with cable ties, while the other had a manager and supervisors unlocking safes. All along, there were threats not to look or move, or you would be shot. The robber had just tied my wrists together with the pistol lying on the ground between my legs when I heard a commotion. A staff member had managed to exit while they were distracted. The robbers followed him and left the bank quickly. They got nothing. All in all, I was there with 15 other staff for about 35 minutes. They were caught further down the track. These were career bank robbers who pulled off a number of robberies over a period of time before being caught. It was really like a movie, dressed in suits, dark glasses, gloves, black spray paint over the cameras. You open the time lock safe, you get ready to open safe deposit boxes, you do the night safe. They certainly had a plan. 6 months later, the same branch was hit by another group. I had since moved to another city, but that robbery, according to my colleagues who were in both, was way more terrifying. I was living with a man I'd known for a month. New York City be like that, and one day I left without saying anything to him. I was at McDonald's and he texted and asked if I was at Papa John's, which was across from McDonald's. Thought, oh, creepy. Then I got home and we had a conversation where he started talking about something I just texted my girlfriend about. And it was a topic we had never discussed before. Red flag. I'm in danger. All the times he seemed to be in the right place at the right time, had food for me when I hadn't eaten, hit me all at once. Found out, dude had spyware on my phone and was watching my every move. So 100% agree, this is extremely creepy and no one should be doing this. But with a weird, cute, twisted idea, what if, ironically, he actually just was really caring, but he had no idea how to properly give that kind of care? Hey, buddy, you had a good workout? I bet you did. That was some really good Pilates in there. I brought you some water and this really delicious Big Mac for that nice protein. You need your protein, Big Mac?
Yeah, thanks, buddy, but I didn't tell you I was going to go for a workout.
Oh, I know. I'm your Papa Bird, watching you wherever you go. Gotta have a Big Mac for a big man. I love you.
When I was 18 years old, I was living in my first apartment by myself. I had no roommates, and my parents had just moved. My downstairs neighbors were a group of 20-somethings who had lots of traffic. Constantly people coming and going, parties multiple times per week. Rarely saw the same people twice. One day, I noticed a blacked-out vehicle in one of the parking lots. I swear I saw a camera with a long lens through the heavily tinted windows, but I just kind of brushed it off. Maybe it's paranoia. Over the next 3 days, I see more and more surveillance. Vans, sedans, trucks, all of them mirror black and limo tint windows. They would sit there for 8 or so hours at a time, and another vehicle would rotate in and relieve the post. Then, quick as they came, they disappeared one day. Now I'm getting concerned. I have no idea what is going on, but someone is definitely watching my apartment building. 2 weeks after I saw the last surveillance vehicle, I go out on my balcony for a smoke. That's when I see the cops. Holy crap. So many freaking cops. They were stacked up, breaching style on the sides of the building adjacent to me. There were probably 24 uniformed officers. Suddenly they fan out, weapons drawn and hot, and aimed at my building. They take defensive positions and are yelling at each other. One of them motions at me aggressively to go inside. Then a file of 12 SWAT officers begin closing in on my building, walking right up the path. I'm crapping my pants now because I've got a half an ounce of herbs and alcohol in my house, and there's 40 cops outside. I go inside and hide everything as best I can and go to the window that faces outside so I can watch this crazy crap go down. The neighbors below me got raided. The SWAT team fired a launcher of some sort through their windows. I heard 5 loud pops followed by acrid smoke wafting through my vents. They forcefully entered the apartment and I heard so freaking many shots. One small caliber pop followed by a roar of larger weapons. Must have been 100 rounds. I threw myself on the floor of my apartment as I listened to the supersonic crack of rounds missing. It seemed to never stop. I guess the neighbors were major players in the illegal substance game, and one of them pulled their piece during the raid, so the SWAT team terminated all 3 of them. The apartment building was condemned, and I had to move back in with my parents. After the fact, I realized how lucky I was to not get shot on my balcony or struck by a stray round in my home. Sometimes I have flashbacks and nightmares to that moment. My face on the uncomfortably thick carpet, blue-gray smoke in the apartment, glass shattering, dry wall cracking, rounds flying.
When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.